Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Murder Church, Sunday morning per usual, publicly buzzed live Murder Church to be exact. Thank you everyone for coming through here again early on a Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time. Appreciate it. See, the chat's already filled up with some early morning folks. Bonnie, CR, Leanne, Jay, Tangled Crochet, Megsy, Shannon, aspiring court reporter. Everybody, thank you so much for coming through here, guys, this morning per usual on a Murder Church. And you know what time it is, huh? The bells are ringing. L, what are you doing? Thank you for coming in here. Appreciate it. You always want to be in your seat, in the pew, before the bells are ringing. I know it's hard. It's very hard. It's very difficult. We're going to be going into week 8 of the Jeffrey Dahmer insanity trial as we truck on through this thing. 2 months into this thing. Can you believe that? That's absolutely unbelievable. Joannie B. popping through here as well. Gotta have the bells. Gotta have the bells, folks. Gotta have the bells. Yeah, and I've got some other sound effects I'm just going to lay on you to get her going. I was killing that one Friday. Everybody that didn't see Feral Friday night, go check that out. We got taken over by a hacker. Suspicious again of Jen from the Jabo Nation, but I don't know. Some shit happened. Some shit went down. They forced us to play a terrible video game. It was horrible. 3 hours. But no, we actually completed it is what's impressive. Thanks to mainly Shannon and Dan. But yeah, thanks, Jay, for hanging out again for another one of our specials, brother. Absolutely unbelievable. Oh, Viv popping through here as well. Strychnine. Also, Miss Sarah. Everybody. Love it, guys. Thank y'all so much. I'm not a damn hacker. I'm telling y'all. I'm telling you. Will we ever get through a special without a hacker, Jen, taking over the stream? I thought we were good, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere's, completely I lost control of everything. Luckily, they're nice. That's why we think it's Jen, right? She's from Canada, super incredibly nice, lets me still have control, but she wants her way, right? She wants to make sure that we're doing whatever she wants on the special, so it's interesting. Yeah, please go back and check that out. On the front of the t-shirts that we dropped, thank you every single person that came through and bought one of those shirts. That's absolutely insane and amazing. The colored one sold completely out. We only have 4 left of the acid wash print, and I will pop that link into the chat in case anybody does want to grab one of those. 4 of those remain, but after today, those do go away. Those will not be still on the site after midnight tonight, actually. So yeah, those, at least the first run until the next variant comes out, those are kaput. They are finished. Canadian Polite Hacker. I got to make a hacker shirt. Is what I got to make. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and get into this. We're going to be hanging out most of the morning, or the entire morning and into the early afternoon with Dr. Wallstorm Jr., again, forensic psychiatrist. We saw part 1 of his testimony last week. And yeah, I believe he will probably take up the rest of the morning and again into the early afternoon. And again, thank you guys all for hanging out. If you come in through randomly, please hit that like. Really helps us out here. Helps us get into the old YouTube algorithms. Please sub up if you're not. If you're new here, welcome. Hit the 3 little dots on the side and make sure all notifications are turned on so you don't miss any content that I dropped. I dropped a new video yesterday on the latest serial killer that was found, Rex Herman. Herman, I believe, is his name, and I will pop that into the chat as well. And it's an absolutely horrible story that keeps developing, and as that continues to develop, I will continue to put out, some content. I'm sure I will be doing a live stream probably on the indictment here. I know that Jay and Bob covered that on Friday in detail, but I will probably go into something along those lines this week as well, so keep an eye on that. But here is a video, a short little synced video, and this is a story of a lady that actually encountered him earlier this month, I believe July 3rd, in a park that is not far from Jay. And luckily she did not meet her demise and actually got to get away. She called her sister. Again, go check out that video. Leah, thank you for coming through here. Mandy popping in, good morning. Put a little bit of work into that, and I'm proud of that video. Again, keep an eye on if I go to Jay's, he lives very close. I keep forgetting how close this guy was to Jay, in his backyard, folks. So please check out that video. I'd really appreciate it. Throw some likes on it, throw some shares on it. Helps us out as well here at Publicly Buzzed. And you guys are amazing. We're going to jump right into this thing. Murder Church, week 8. Let's go. Make sure the sound's good here. 1 second. Sunday, baby.
Be seated, please. Doctor, please.
Dr. Wallstrom,
Gerald Boyle. We all love
about
Boyle.
to go into the psychiatric history of Mr. Dahmer, and as I've told you that the jury is more than familiar with the facts, and your report indicates some brevity with regard to the facts. So we're going to ask you to read that. But before we do that, did you have occasion to talk to the natural mother and father of the defendant?
Yes, I did.
Was that telephonically?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And you asked some questions that you thought were pertinent?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Would you tell us the psychiatric history you took from Mr. Dahmer?
Yes, I will. Mr. Dahmer is a 31-year-old white male with a long history of serious mental illness, which was essentially untreated. He described his experience of growing up in a household with tremendous conflicts.
Before we even get started here, also see Jamie's name popping in here. Happy birthday to Jamie. Actually, yesterday. So, yeah, happy birthday, Jamie. Hope you had a good one, brother. Coming through here, hanging out, always modding up. I know Jamie in real life. He's a real life friend, and I love this guy. Thank you very much, brother. Nickname Ninja, and it's for a reason, folks. Charlotte coming through here. Hey, Steve, I have guests, but I had to just say how funny your graphic with Dan and your mom and dad was. Thank you very much. I thought that was hilarious. Thanks, Jay. Appreciate it on that video. Strike first. Yeah, we got some people coming through here late. We'll hold off for just a minute. I see some people already passing the collection plate around. My God. Yeah, and that would freak me the shit out as well. Dude just lurking, coming out of the woods. Oh, what time is it? Just making all this small talk. That dude is huge as well. He's massive. He's super imposing. We'll start her out, baby. The collection plate is out and about. Bonnie Bailey with $2 passing the collection plate around. Give me the loot. Give me the loot. Thank you so much. Crack a beer. We'll give you a little ODB. Give you a little biggie to start it out with. Miss Church, I know, but Mandy's been moving also, so yeah, thank you for coming back in here, Mandy. Appreciate it. Also, killing it in the mod game. Yeah, good morning, brother. Again, happy birthday. Let's see here. Jay, adding to the collection plate, baby. $2. Thank you so much, brother. Appreciate it. I'm a bad man. Love it. Thank you guys so much. That's absolutely unbelievable. Seriously. And Anna going to add $2 as well to the collection plate. Hell yeah. Give me the loot. Give me the loot. Boom. Give you a little bit of both. Give you a little bit of both. Thank you so much, guys. Seriously. Unbelievable. Good morning, Dizzy, coming through here. Yeah, filling up. Aaron, what's going on? Good morning. Awesome. Yeah. The pews are filling quickly this morning in Old Murder Church. Love to see it. This is awesome. Thank you guys so much. Just catching up here on chat just real quick. Yeah. You know what? We need a good potluck after church. That'd be great. Everyone bring, a nice dish. We all figure out who's going to bring the dessert, who's going to bring the sides, who's going to bring some main dishes. We need some drinks. And who's going to bring the after party goodies? Am I right? You know what I'm talking about? A little bit of probably nothing. Huh? See a man about a dog. Denise coming through from Cali. Early as shit in Cali. I know that's for sure. Oh my God! Right, I was about to hit it. I was about to go back into the video, but no, Shannon, into the plate. Give me the loot. Give me the loot. You're gonna get it, baby. Give me the loot. Give me the loot. Yeah. Y'all already deserved them. Extra bells. Extra bells are out here, folks. Extra bells. Oh wow, Anna. That's awesome. Wow. Yeah. Keep us updated on that for sure. Yeah. The J Buzz Nation, Jay Ennis over here. That's wild. Good morning. Kelsey coming through here as well. Thank you very much. Oh yeah. Passing out some donuts. That's not a bad idea. Who brought the donuts this morning? Yeah. And again, we got some mimosas. We got some Bloody Marys. We got some beers between wieners and nuts. You never know. And then I'll pass a little J out as well. We get the party started early, folks. And CR coming through with the $1.99 super sticker as well. My God, folks. Give me the loot. Give me the loot. Man, the collection plate's filling up quick this morning. Wow, you guys are amazing. This is crazy. You guys blow my mind every single Sunday with this. And Art with Viv. Also, if you're not following Art with Viv, make sure you are. Apps on YouTube and Twitter. Amazing. Teething the Pastor Steve and Murder Church. Thank you very much, Art. Appreciate that. And again, make sure that you're giving her a follow on the socials as well. And you gotta be ready for your tips for Tuesday, huh? All right, guys, I'm looking through here just real quick. Yes, absolutely. Make sure you're following Jay as well. In the morning, YNW Melly returns, folks. YNW Melly returns after another break. This trial is absolute madness, folks. Please come and hang out with Jay in the morning. I will be there. Yeah, it's that's my favorite thing right now is the YNW Melly trial. It's wild as hell. Okay, cool. Nice. I'll have to check that out, Anna. Nice. Yes, happy birthday, Jamie. City Kitty. Got the coffee coming through as well. All right, folks, let's rock and roll. Thank you. Love you guys so much. Absolutely amazing. Crazy.
Between his parents and little affection. He said that this resulted in ongoing feelings of insecurity, anxiety, and depression.
Leanne, now going to make me pause it up. Hey, man, Pastor Steve, collection plate, $2. Thank you. Thank you so much, Leanne. Give me the loot. Give me the loot. It's the best. And I'm gonna go ahead and just start it off. We're early, but Jim Leahy needs to be heard.
I'm sober enough to know what I'm doing, and I'm drunk enough to really enjoy doing it.
Yes, that is the motto here at Publicly Buzzed, folks.
He reported feeling as if he was a disappointment to his father, an analytical chemist, because he did poorly in math. He denied any physical or sexual abuse while growing up. He describes himself as having few friends and living an increasingly lonely private existence. He can only remember being attracted to males, which consisted of initial solitary masturbatory experiences while fantasizing up until his mid-20s. Following this, his sexual experience consisted of non-consenting sex with drugged males, anonymous sex in bookstores or bathhouses, and sexual experiences.
Again, trigger warning, folks. Anybody coming through later, everybody that's already in here, I'm sure knows. Trigger warning all over this.
With dead bodies, those of which he had killed. He cannot recall.
Wait. Go ahead, Doctor.
He cannot recall ever having an ongoing, mutually consenting relationship in his entire life. As an early adolescent, he developed a morbid preoccupation with what he referred to as road kills.
Sorry, is this something he's saying?
Yes.
He told you he used the word morbid?
He used the word road kills.
And morbid curiosity is your word.
Yes, it is.
Would you make sure that when it's his words, you fix the parentheses?
Yes, I will.
Quotes.
And would drag these animals killed by cars into the woods near his home in Bath, Ohio, open them up, and look at their insides. Once he defleshed a large dog and bleached its bones and skull. Another time he defleshed a beagle's head and impaled it on a pole. He described it as, quote, a stupid prank, end quote.
These are rough.
Following an unprovoked attack by older boys where he was hit on the head with a billy club, he first recalled persistent homicidal and sexual fantasies. This was at age 15. He developed homicidal fantasies and plans towards a jogger who he found attractive. He saw no alternatives to this behavior when asked, stating he, quote, did not know how to meet him, end quote. This type of fantasy persisted and culminating in killing a hitchhiker, Stephen Hicks, when he was 18. He recalled dismembering the body and masturbating while looking at the internal organs and skull. He stated that he felt he had a choice regarding his behavior at this time and knew it was wrong.
And a lot of this is like, we've already heard this, right? Numerous times in the past 8 weeks, but it's like different specialists, experts who have been talking to Dahmer, you know, and they're analyzing it from their point of view. So again, we've heard a lot of this stuff from the childhood into the early part of the killings when he was a teen, the hitchhikers or the hitchhiker getting pulled over. We've heard all this stuff, you know, and then going into about a decade before he started really going off and just couldn't control himself. But again, it's the different outlook from these different experts that we're kind of getting the feel of. But we're hearing this again and again and again, and it can be a lot. This, again, trigger warning is warranted on these morning church episodes. Lakota coming through here. Morning. Thank you.
He stated that knowing he, quote, could do what I wished, my parentheses, to the corpse, end parentheses, without worrying about rejection, I would have total control, added to the excitement and pleasure. When I asked...
That's a quick quote now.
That's it, yeah, quick quote. When I asked him, had he experienced rejection before, he stated, quote, no, that he had not approached anyone before and had not been rejected.
It's a quick quote.
Quit quote. He stated further that, quote, killing and doing what I wanted, end quote, was a solitary masturbatory fantasy for years. He said that he never talked to anyone about his homosexuality and did not feel it would be accepted by the family. He stated that, quote, from age 16 on, sexual thoughts took up a good part of his day, at least one half, end quote. He considered himself, quote, hypersexual, main focus of my life. It interfered with having a normal life, end quote.
What did he mean, or did you ask him to define hypersexual? What did you understand that word to mean?
I understood him to mean that he felt that the sexual thoughts took up more time than allowed him to get on with his life in other ways.
Talking about like a hyperactive?
Yeah.
Okay, continue on.
He had begun to abuse marijuana and alcohol in high school. Marijuana abuse ended after high school, but alcohol abuse persisted.
Damn marijuana. Culprit.
He has met the DSM-3R criteria
Culprit.
for alcohol dependence, and it interfered academically, occupationally, and socially to varying degrees over time. He stated that his feelings over his parents' divorce and feeling horrified about murdering Mr. Hicks resulted in increased drinking. He reported various attempts to resist his sexual thoughts and repetitive violent thoughts over the next 9 years. These included alcohol abstinence and sexual repression while at his grandmother's house in 1983 and 1984. Following this period, he was gradually less able to resist his desires. He recalled going to the wake
I'll take a
of
minute,
an
Viv.
18-year-old stranger with the idea of digging up the body. He said, quote, "I wanted a nice-looking guy without having to hurt anyone," end quote. He bought a shovel and returned to the grave 2 weeks later. Quote, "I was going to dig him up, but it was winter. The ground was too hard. I wanted to enjoy the corpse sexually, viewing pictures, seeing what it looked like inside," end quote. He said that this way he would have, quote, "total control without
Well,
having
he didn't say total. He said he would have...
I'm sorry. He said
Don't
that
you put words in his mouth.
this way he would, quote, "have control without having..."
Is there some typewritten copy of this? I've got a hand-scratched note.
This is my report.
The other guy's got it. Go ahead. You know what page we're on? 6.
We're on 6.
Yeah.
At the
Boyle's
top.
hilarious,
Sorry,
dude.
doctor. It says he said this way...
The other
he
guy's
would
got it.
have
Fuck
control.
off. Keep
That's what you
reading.
were.
Yes. Quote, let's see. He said that this way he would, quote, "have control without having to hurt anyone and not having to worry about anyone else's desires," end quote. During another attempt to displace his desires, he hid in a store in the Southridge Mall after hours and then stole an attractive male mannequin.
That's in quotes, attractive.
Make sure that you add in there that it was an attractive male mannequin. I want to make sure that people know that it was a hot mannequin. I'm just not picking up any willy-nilly mannequin. It was very attractive.
Male man.
Yes.
Did he say that?
Yes, he did.
Okay, continue on.
He brought it home and attempted to sexually satisfy himself with it.
Go ahead.
Following this period, he began to frequent bathhouses, bookstores, and gay bars and would have casual sex, quote, "one-night stands," end quote. He began to drug males in the baths to, quote, "keep them there longer, avoid unwanted anal sex, and avoid rejection," end quote. He remembered taking Steve Toomey to the Ambassador Hotel, drinking and drugging him.
He named the kind of pills.
It's a hypnotic.
Go ahead.
And having some mutual, quote, light sex, fall asleep, and woke up on top of him and he was dead. I had no intention of hurting him, end quote. He described, quote, "absolute horror, knew I did it." After this,
That was
I know. That's what makes him so different, Aaron. Like, I mean, he's a piece of shit. Don't get me wrong, but the rest of the women and guys, mostly guys, of course, but the rest of these serial killers, once they get caught, they're still trying to like just hold off for a minute. They're not trying to give everything up. And then honestly, even after they're convicted, they're still holding off, and then they'll start giving up little pieces once we get closer to the actual death penalty, if that's in place, right? They always try to hold off and basically have bargaining chips. Not Jeffrey Dahmer. In his case, the night he got caught, when he was taken down, as we've heard from the detectives that was in the room with him, when he gave a 60-hour confessional, just started spilling the beans right then and there. Very different with Jeffrey Dahmer. He was tired, I think, honestly. I don't like Jeffrey Dahmer by no means, but he's really interesting and unique in that aspect, as he was willing to just give up all of these details, graphic, horrible details that makes him look like a monster. He is a monster for what he's done. But they don't want to show that, right? On Tuesday, we just showed, I believe it was Tuesday, I just showed the last ever Ted Bundy interview. If you guys want to go back and check that out from the live from earlier in the week. At this point, he was accepting what he had done, after years of denial, but He's still very manipulative in that interview. He's still trying to control the situation. In past interviews with Jeffrey Dahmer, after all of this, after he was already convicted, after he was already in prison, there's some interviews with his father. There's some interviews, of course, with the news. It's still insanely sensationalized. He was open about it still. Very, very unique serial killer in Jeffrey Dahmer. Garbage can piece of shit. Maybe one of the worst, top tier piece of shit. But it's unique, man, that he was just willing to go. And it's actually really awesome for experts and for even today, looking back on a trial like this where it's all out there. Very interesting, man. This one's interesting.
Yes.
Morning, Austin.
After this, he stated that, quote,
coming in
the
here.
compulsion/drive was too strong, end quote. He had been trying to resist but quit after this. He stated that he, quote, did not get a thrill out of killing. I wanted it to be painless, not a hate crime, not a racial crime, not a sexual orientation hatred. 5 were straight male hustlers. Physique was the main thrust. No malice towards any of them, end quote. He described the planning of the killings, which he knew were wrong. He attempted to conceal the crimes by either disposing of or concealing the bodies. Although this clearly
Like that, yeah. Dahmer was Dr. I'm probably butchering it, Dietz' favorite case because of his honesty and gentle nature. He liked him because he didn't try to amaze him, deceive him, or charm him in any way, right? They always want to still have the control, still have the power. And yeah, still try to, look at the way Gacy, for example, spoke to people. And Bundy. All these dudes. Manson. I know Manson wasn't technically a serial killer, but still in that vein, in that light of the way they like to talk and be in the spotlight after this was all said and done. Even, they don't want to give up all the details. They don't want to talk about certain things, but they still want to control the conversation. And again, amaze, deceive, charm. That's the best way to put that. That's interesting. Dahmer was just like, here it is.
became more disorganized over time.
When you talk about, you use the word disorganized over time, what do you mean by that word disorganized?
Right, yeah, I know what you meant there.
Frequency increased and the bodies were piling up. He was turning his apartment into a morgue.
Continue.
After the 5th killing, he began to experience various bizarre beliefs which influenced his behavior. One of which was that of making a, quote, temple, end quote, or, quote, power center, end quote, with skeletons and skulls, hoping it would be, quote, be a means to get in contact with spirits that would aid me in getting power, to magically give me abilities and talents that I did not have, end quote. One power he mentioned was, quote, financial, make me more money, end quote, such as in, quote, real estate investments, end quote. I asked him if he ever thought of conventional ways of studying real estate, like taking a course, and he stated that he, quote, never did, end quote. He thought money made in this way would allow him to, quote, move to a warmer climate like Florida, end quote. He also stated that the power center would give him, quote, social abilities to control others without having to go to extremes, end quote. He denied being involved in any cult groups. He had in the past bought the Satanic Bible and, quote, read it and threw it out. He stated
Hold on a second. Go ahead, Doctor.
He denied being involved in any cult groups.
I'm sorry, I think he stated that these ideas were his own.
Yes. He stated that these ideas were his own. He also stated that he tried to create zombies.
Go ahead.
While four of his last 7 victims were unconscious, he described...
That's true. Ed Kemper was like that too. Yeah, good point, Anna. Dahmer has similar personality traits with Kemper, meaning they were both like, yeah, I did this. I'll tell you what you want. Granted, Kemper turned himself in, but both. And his is interesting too, man. Like, he felt like some sort of, I don't think remorse is even the word, because he still was very vacant on that part, but he was so intellectually gifted and he was so smart. I don't think Dahmer was probably as smart as this guy was, but yeah, Kemper's very interesting. I'm going to do some stuff on Kemper. I need to dig into him a little bit more. I know the story. Again, I watched Mindhunters. It was an awesome ass show. And just being a true crime fan, of course, I'd heard about him beforehand. But yeah, I need to dig into him a little bit more. He's an interesting one. He's very intriguing.
He described drilling small holes through their skulls, then inserting a metal syringe and injecting weak acid or boiling water 3 inches into their frontal lobes. Quote, I wanted to induce a permanent zombie-like state, to make them pliable, obey my wishes, so they would be permanently with me and compliant, so they would never leave my apartment, so I would not get caught. I wanted them coherent to follow commands, but not coherent to have their own thought processes. If they had their own thought processes, they might remember that they had to leave or lived somewhere else. Thought it would work, but it never did. The ideas came from within. I wanted just one, in my parentheses, zombie, end quote. He also described cannibalizing 2 of his victims and the excitement that they were now a permanent part of him. He reported that starting with Raymond Smith, he photographed his victims to remember what they looked like for masturbation purposes. Later, he remembered photographing, quote, to remember what the internal parts looked like, end quote. He described becoming more interested in the insides again. The colors always, that's a quote, the colors always amazed me. I never showed the photographs to anyone. End quote. He described the entire process as, quote, becoming less satisfying. Wish I had just stopped. It seemed like I could not, end quote. He denied symptoms consistent with antisocial personality disorder or sexual sadism.
Stop there. How are you able to conclude, based upon what you knew in your conversations with Mr. Dahmer, that he denied symptoms consistent with antisocial personality disorder? How do you come about concluding that?
Well, you look at various things. First of all, you don't just look at what he says. You look at partly what he says about, does he meet the criteria? You know, you ask him about symptoms and he says, yes, I did this, or yes, I had this, no, I didn't have this. But you also look at collateral history. You talk to parents. You read accounts of what other people have said.
So when you say he denied symptoms, what you're saying is you asked him a lot of questions, he gave you the answers, and this, in effect, means that he wasn't antisocial in your opinion.
That's correct.
So when you say he denied symptoms, he isn't denying them at all. He's answering your questions that lead you to conclude that.
That's correct.
Okay. How about sexual sadism? What is sexual sadism?
That is that's a paraphilia where you derive pleasure by torturing others. The pleasure is in the actual torturing.
Now, why can't he be classified as a sexual sadist?
Well, there's nothing to suggest that from anything he said or any of the accounts that I've read that he has stated or they have stated that there was pleasure being derived in hurting. He in fact stated that that was the least pleasant part, that he often had to have a drink to overcome that part of the inhibition.
Does a sexual sadist want a conscious or an unconscious person?
That would be generally conscious.
Okay, so the sexual sadist wants to see how it's affecting the
Yes.
Do you know of any reason to not believe the fact that when he did the things that he did, that these people were unconscious?
Oh, shit. Dilly Pickles. Welcome to becoming a member here, the Buzz to Confused level. Hell yeah. Pass out the beers, guys. Pass out the beers in chat. Absolutely amazing. Get in some satisfying pours as well. Make sure those beers are passed out there, folks. Love it, love it. Give me the loot, give me the loot. Welcome, welcome. J Buzz Nation, baby. Growing a little bit every single day. That's awesome. Yeah, let me give you a few beers there. And I'll give you a Bloody Mary and a mimosa, boom, on the back end. And a J, rabada boom. Thank you so much. Welcome in, welcome in. And Lakota coming in behind it, $4.99 super chat. I got this to go towards the alcohol for the potluck. Anyone can join me. Thank you. That'll help a lot. That's awesome. Boom. Love it. Love it. That's awesome. Thank you guys so much. Yeah, they are. There they are. There they are. Coming through now, the beers. Pouring through, baby. Pouring through. Welcome them in. Welcome them in to the J Buzz Nation, folks. Love it. Love to see it. Thank y'all so much. Tree Baby Tennessee coming through here. Another new name. Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much. Love to see it.
They were unconscious most of the time. I know that in one case he did strike someone on the head with a mallet in an attempt not to derive pleasure from that, but to render them unconscious.
Okay. Continue on, please.
He denied auditory or other hallucinations. He denied symptoms consistent with major depression or manic depression.
All right, now when you say that, what you're doing once again is saying, I'm trying to put this fella in a category. I'm asking him a lot of questions, and he's not responding to me that would lead me to believe he could be put into that category.
That's correct.
Okay.
Prodromal or residual symptoms of schizophrenia are present, and this disorder could not be ruled out.
Okay, now translate that for us. What does that mean?
He does not meet the criteria for schizophrenia in terms of having a definite period of continuous hallucinations or very delusional, disturbed behavior.
That would have to be there for one to be able to conclude that.
That's correct.
But when you use the word prodromal or residual symptoms of schizophrenia, what are you, and you say they are present, what are you saying?
That there were 6 symptoms that I focused on. One was there was marked social isolation or withdrawal. That is from what he says in almost every account that I've read. Impairment in role functioning as a wage earner or a student. He had a decline in his high school years in functioning and then dropped out completely in his first year of college. That's a typical time when a schizophrenic episode occurs, when first leaving home or early parts of college. He did function for long periods of time in a job. However, the job was eventually lost due to deterioration in work functioning. He had markedly peculiar behavior. Some examples of that were wearing these yellow contacts around socially, staring inside the bodies of dead animals when he was a kid.
Welcome all new people. Love it, guys. Seriously.
Affect. Almost all the mental health professionals that
super welcoming gang here is what we got, folks. And yeah, you're gonna love it here. You're gonna love it. And also, if you love it here, you're gonna love the Shaming of Jay channel, who streams weekly, pretty much every single day, all freaking day, streaming trials, hanging out, and being absolutely hilarious. I'm sure we'll get a link there to his stuff here momentarily, whether it's the link tree or the YouTube or Twitter. Boom. Seriously, all new folks, give old Jay a follow as well. Brother from another mother out here.
Evaluate him, do notice a blunted or constricted affect.
What does that mean?
That means he doesn't respond with the full range of emotion. It's toned down, it's restricted, it's flattened, it's bland.
Okay, go ahead.
Odd beliefs or magical thinking which influence behavior. These would be related to beliefs regarding his attempts to make a power center.
Okay.
He had odd beliefs about ingesting bodies and them becoming part of him. He had some magical thinking that there was forces in the environment that were controlling the situation so as to protect him from ever being caught.
So what you're saying is that it can't be ruled out, but you're not making a diagnosis
That's correct.
that he was one.
He has some symptoms.
Okay.
Absolutely,
Good.
ma'am.
Continue on, please, Doctor.
Thank you, Jason.
He reported several exhibitionist acts. On
He,
page-
he reported several exhibitionist acts and one episode of taking pictures of a minor with alleged fondling of his penis.
I agree.
He had 2 arrests for drunken disorderly conduct
It's
in
actually-
1981 and 1982.
Yeah, he's brutal compared to the other
One arrest for
ones.
disorderly conduct
Least favorite expert so far.
in 1983, and one shot.
And it's nothing personal. It's just the personality. It's just he's not. I mean, we've all watched these trials, and if it's easy. Again, we talk about it all the time. It would suck to be a juror in a case. Let's take YNW Melly, for example. And then you have somebody up there that is just lulling you to sleep with their personality and the way they speak, man. That's not good.
Uplifting arrest in 1983.
Ooh, I'd love to trial.
died.
Oh, man.
Robbery is a
In that same vein, Viv, my grandma, man, I miss her so much because of gravy and biscuits, man. Oh, my God. Yeah, she is amazing with gravy and biscuits. I love gravy and biscuits a lot. They're probably my favorite breakfast food. Got Southern Sunday chicken, fried chicken, baby.
the motive in any
We gotta stop talking about food, Joe.
crimes with which he is
We
charged.
got too long to go.
He denied symptoms consistent with any sexual disorder except necrophilia. He reported symptoms consistent with schizotypal and borderline personality disorders and
shit.
psychotic disorders.
It's like Austin is wanting to release 3 more colorful teas, folks. Now, those did sell out basically instantly last night. So, yeah, if anybody does, hold on, I'll put those up right now and put a link in chat here. But, yeah, she's going to release 3 more color teas. And, again, after this morning and after today, those T-shirts, the acid wash and the tie-dye color, those will be gone. Those will be kaput until we come through with another variant. Yeah, that's awesome, Austin. I'll get that going.
Disorder not otherwise specified.
Morning, Dan.
He received court
Crazy 8 legs. Everybody coming through here. Morning, guys. Seriously, thank you.
Charged with exposing himself by Evelyn A. Rosen, Ph.D., from February 23rd, 1987 to March 7th, 1988. There is speculation in the notes that he never gained anything from this outpatient treatment and never really made a serious commitment to it. He is never reported to have been an inpatient in a mental hospital.
Did you do a medical history?
Yes, I did.
What is it, please?
He had no apparent acute or chronic illnesses. He was receiving a medication which is basically an antihistamine for a skin reaction from bug bites. He has
Go ahead.
He has a history of head injuries. While walking on the street at age 14, he reports being hit with a billy club in the neck by an older group of boys, from which he recovered with no loss of consciousness. Second episode, he was hit in the head at age 26 with approximately a 1-hour loss of consciousness, kicked in the ribs. He required sutures to close the head wound. This followed his being robbed. And a history of seizures was denied.
What would that indicate to you? The history of seizures might cause you to figure out that there was something organically wrong?
Yes,
So you have none of that here.
we don't have any evidence.
All right, the next section of your report is family social history, and I had indicated to you that the jury really has had that expressed to them, and that yours is so consistent with what the other doctors said about where he was born and what age he moved and where he went to high school, when he went in the Army, Ohio State. So I'm going to ask you to just skip that.
Okay,
I would like you to go to the mental status examination, please.
all right. Mr. Dahmer presents to the examination room on each occasion accompanied by correctional personnel. He is dressed in jail clothing and appears neatly groomed with a several-day growth of beard. He is oriented to person, place, time, and situation. His mood is depressed. His affect is generally bland and appropriate to his mood. His thought content is positive for suicidal thoughts without an active plan. He states, quote,
Morning,
"If
Kathy.
I had my way."
New subscriber, crossover from the JBN, yeah, Jabo Nation. Well, welcome to the J-Buzzed Nation. Mixing it up, baby. Thank you, Kathy. Appreciate that.
I would prefer to...
Again, Jed, posted a link there for again, 3 more color versions thanks to Austin this morning. Thank you, Austin. And again, once those are gone, those will be gone after today. So that's amazing. All new folks hanging out in here. What is up? Let's go, baby. Hit that like if you have not hit the like yet. That really helps us out here, folks. And yeah, fuck yeah.
OD, overdosed, with an anesthetic, like animals at a shelter, end quote. He denies homicidal ideas or plans. He reported some intrusive images of the victims, which he described as unpleasant. He reports occasional sexual thoughts, which he, quote, tries to block out, end quote. He is not unrealistically anxious and expresses no current delusions, paranoid, or bizarre ideas. His thought process is generally logical and understandable at the time of the interview. He denies hallucinations in any of the 5 sensory spheres. There is no evidence of any problems with his speech, and there are no psychomotor deficits in terms of abnormal movements, agitation, or retardation. His intellect appears grossly intact in all spheres. His short-term memory is good. His long-term memory appears intact, although he describes past periods of blackouts when drinking.
Yeah, Leanne. Well, there will be different variants. This exact version, I'm not exactly sure, maybe down the line, but yeah, every time, and who knows how often we'll do it. It may become a monthly thing. And these went really well, and Austin is fucking awesome at doing this shit. So yeah, there'll definitely be options in the future for more, but yeah, to make it feel special, and like I said, I want these to be for real variants. Yeah, we'll probably just have these up for after today. These exact ones will probably not be available again, at least for a long time, to make them feel as special as possible.
He is able to describe expected socially appropriate behavior in hypothetical situations. His concentration and attention are good. His insight into his illness is poor. He denied taking any medication which might affect the mental status examination or the interviews in general. His mental state appeared generally stable throughout the interviews. On 12/26/91, I observed a scratch across his left wrist, which he stated he did with a plastic spoon, which eased his frustration. On 1/1/92, he was more agitated after being told he could no longer have pens. He reported that he made a suicidal threat after
Crazy
being
8 legs.
upset over a cell search. On 1/4/92, he appeared more fatigued than usual.
Did you review any of the psychological examinations that were taken by Mr. Dahmer that were reported to you?
Yes. Mr. Dahmer was examined by Kenneth H. Smale, Ph.D., clinical psychologist, on 7/28/91 and 8/10/91. His report has been reviewed and relied on me in part, informing my opinions on this matter. He reports administering a battery of psychological tests consisting of the MMPI-2, the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale revised.
Hey, the South has some good food now, okay? I'm just going to say, you're going to have a heart attack a lot quicker, but it's some good food.
And the Rorschach.
Can you tell us what kind of tests these are? Are these tests that are normally taken by psychologists in the course of clinical psychological profiling of a person?
Yeah, every psychologist decides which tests are important in their own battery to come up with
Hand on chat, guys, also trying to catch up here.
hypotheses about mental illness.
And after the tests are taken, are they tests that that you can look at and read and draw your own conclusions, or are you limited to the reading of them by the person who gives them?
The psychologist is the expert in the interpretation and administration of psychological tests, and psychiatrists would ordinarily, if they felt that it
We'll
was
do something a little
useful in
different,
particular
guys.
case, would call on a psychologist to do psychological testing and make an interpretation.
Can you read psychological tests?
That's not my expertise.
I didn't ask you that. Can you read them? You're a psychologist, I mean, you got it.
Well, I'm not a licensed psychologist.
Okay.
I don't read psychological tests.
Okay, fine, that's great. Tell us what this, what are these the three kind of tests that if you were asking a psychologist to give them, you'd ask
If the tunes are right, I can. Leave Stevie Irwin here.
for?
I'm sorry, I didn't
Would
understand.
you ask a psychologist to do these kind of tests on Mr. Dahmer?
These tests are important because the MMPI is a broad screening
It's actually a great question, Strychnine, and I think the $10 level on the YouTube members levelship, there is a, if I'm remembering correctly, and no one ever really picks that, and I'd have to honestly go and look. I think there is a discount for some merch on there, so I'd actually have to look at that. So if anybody is at that level, yeah, that would actually make a lot of sense. Or, you know, maybe I have to need to look at it again and revise that as an idea altogether, because when I first did the membership stuff, I didn't have merch, and it took me a long time to actually get merch processing. You know, pretty much all of this is happening with just me, with just a one-man show rocking and rolling here. Dan is on board. Dan is my sidekick, but, you know, all the behind-the-scenes stuff is basically me piddling and doing it as I get time, so... But that's a great idea, Strychnine, actually. So I'm going to make sure that works out for the future, even if it's on there now at the $10 level. I might have to drop that down a little bit to make it some more sense.
for mental illness. It's a standardized type of test. It's just been revised to the MMPI-2, which is the upgrade from the MMPI-1.
And that's what he was given,
Yes.
okay?
The Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale is an IQ test. That lets us know at approximately what IQ level is Mr. Dahmer functioning. Is he retarded? Is he borderline intelligence? Or is he in the normal range? The Rorschach test is the ink blot test and can be scored both subjectively by interpreting the responses, and there is also an objective way to score them called the Exner scoring system.
All right, tell us when these tests were administered by Dr. Smale.
7/28/91 and 8/10/91.
Within what period of time after his arrest?
These were done within 6 weeks of the arrest.
Was there a conclusion given to you for your review?
Yes.
Tell us what it was.
Dr. Smale concluded that in regard to his IQ tests, all scores remain within the normal range.
What did that mean to you?
That means, based on his testing, that he has a normal IQ.
Okay. What about the MMPI-2?
In regard to his MMPI-2, this profile raises the possibility of a major mental illness, either the quality of a schizophrenic disorder or a major affective disorder.
And you looked into that, did you not?
Yes, I did.
But you didn't agree that he was a schizophrenic, did you?
No, although the schizotypal personality disorder is a schizophrenic spectrum disorder.
Sure, okay.
But he has not been diagnosed by me as schizophrenic, that's correct. And neither did I diagnose him as a major affective disorder.
So by looking at the test, you looked at them for the use that you wanted them, but you arrived at your conclusions independently.
That's correct.
Continue on, please.
The possibility of substance abuse would need clinical exploration. The computerized test interpretation indicated that the respondent was either, quote, likely to be either blatantly psychotic at this time, end quote, or to be subject to, quote, severe breakdown under stress, end quote. Mr. Dahmer's responses to the Rorschach, which is this projective test, the inkblot test, were too few and yielded, quote, limited clinical information, end quote.
Based upon your knowledge and experience in the field of psychiatry, and based upon your knowledge and experience in the field of psychology, for which you said you're not an expert, but you have some training in it, Are you satisfied that Mr. Dahmer, as he was presented to you, and prior to the time that you formalized your opinion of January 9th, 1992, were you satisfied that you had all the kind of tests necessary for you to do your job relative to this case?
Yes, I did.
What's your summary, please?
My summary.
On page 10.
Right. Jeffrey Dahmer is a 31-year-old white male charged with a series of 15 murders. He was examined on 4 occasions while incarcerated in Wisconsin, and extensive records were reviewed along with psychological testing. These examinations were performed for the purpose of determining the defendant's mental state at the time of the crimes with which he is charged and to develop treatment recommendations. The extensive record review, psychiatric and psychological examinations reveal a long history of serious ongoing progressive mental illness.
Did Mr. Dahmer draw for you his shrine?
Yes, he did.
I'm going to show you Defendant's Exhibit 31, which has been received in evidence. That is a shrine that was drawn for Dr. Becker that was received yesterday. And I'd like you to ask you if you can look at that and look at the one he drew for you and tell us whether or not it's substantially the same.
This is, for all practical purposes, the same drawing, the same design. I have the design with me as well.
Oh, man.
Yes, it is. Want me to take it out?
Please. Let the record reflect the doctor separating this from his yellow page notes. Doctor, did you have him date this?
I did not have him date it. It was done on 1/1/91. It's from the 3rd interview.
Your Honor, I've shown this to counsel. Defendant's Exhibit number 32 is the drawing that Dr. Wallstrom has given me that is, he said, is consistent with the one of Dr. Becker, which I think is 27. I move it's received into evidence as Defendant's Exhibit number 32, with the understanding that it was drawn by Jeffrey Dahmer, was it, Doctor?
That's correct.
On 1/1/92?
That's correct.
Any objection to its receipt? None, Your Honor. It's received.
Doctor, you have as a final, I shouldn't say final, but almost final. You have told us today your opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty that each and every time of these homicides, the 15 in question, Jeffrey Dahmer was suffering from a mental disease, to wit, necrophilia, and as a result of that, he lacked substantial capacity to conform his conduct to the requirements of law.
That's correct.
And you make those findings to a reasonable degree of psychiatric certainty.
That's correct.
That's all. Thank you.
Cross-examination.
Doctor, there's a portion of Dr. Smale's report that you did not quote. Isn't that true?
That's correct.
When you talked about the Rorschach, is that
Could get real. Could get real.
correct?
I would have to refer to Dr. Smale's report. May I do
Let
that?
me read the paragraph to you that you did not.
We all know that McCann takes no shit, and he will tell any expert that you fucking suck, that you don't know shit, that you shouldn't have been able to even get out of school, that you probably paid off your teachers to get good grades, and you need to go back to the house.
You only quoted a portion of it.
Okay.
Mr. Dahmer's responses on the Rorschach were quite constricted and thus yielded limited clinical information. You did put that in, didn't you, in your report?
Yes, I did.
Dr. Smale went on to say the following, which you did not include in your report. I ask you, did you? The relatively few responses that he gave suggested a capacity to perceive conventional reality with no clear evidence of major mental illness. Again, the profile is most noteworthy for the limited clinical information available, yet what is evident is not pathognomic of major mental illness. That's what he said in the report, didn't he?
I'm trusting that you're reading that correctly.
Pardon?
I'm trusting you're reading that correctly.
They don't trust me, doctor. Take a look at it.
Okay.
The last paragraph.
Okay.
You chose to put in the portion of the paragraph that said that limited clinical information, but you chose not to include the part that suggested that the few responses that he gave suggested a capacity to perceive conventional morality with no evidence of major mental illness, no clear evidence of such. You did not include that portion in your report.
That's correct. I did not put Dr. Smale's entire report in my report.
Did you talk with Dr. Smale about it?
I can't recall a specific discussion about that.
All right. Did you talk with him about it?
He reported that the testing revealed a very disturbed profile in general.
All right. Let me ask, doctor, did you talk with Dr. Smale about it?
About what?
Did you at any time call Dr. Smale to discuss this report?
I did discuss his psychological findings, yes, with him by phone.
By phone, all right.
That's correct.
Did he tell you that he had found the defendant competent at all times in terms of court proceedings?
We didn't discuss that.
You didn't ask him about that?
Well, I'm going to object to any question concerning Mr. Dahmer's competency to stand trial, and Dr. Smale's finding in that regard as being immaterial and irrelevant, and it's a different total basis, so I object to it.
We have a very broad purview in assessing whether he was mentally ill at the time. Did Dr. Smale tell you that he had found him at all times competent to appear in court?
I can't recall.
You made no notes of that?
No, I did not.
In terms of your discussions with Mr. Dahmer about his early childhood,
Yes.
did you find out that it was physically a relatively comfortable childhood?
No, I did not.
What were you told in terms of the home, particularly in the junior high and high school home?
Well, I certainly wouldn't limit it to the junior high and high school home. If you wanted to talk about childhood, basically an unavailable father for the first 5 years of life, a mother who got extremely depressed and was taking sedative medications from 5 or 6 years on.
Was there any evidence of physical
Hospitalized in a
abuse?
mental institution.
Pardon?
Hospitalized in a mental institution.
Did you
She
secure any
was for
records of
mental
that?
illness.
Judge, he's answering the questions being interrupted. He hasn't finished. He said, the doctor's in the process of answering the question.
Well, the question that I put to him was it a relatively comfortable in terms of a physical description, and he chose to make another answer.
Well, then,
My answer is no, it wasn't.
Okay, just a minute, just a minute. Mr. McCann, let's have the next question.
He dwelt during junior high school,
Round
and high
one
school in a comfortable
in the
home,
books,
did he not?
folks. Yeah, McCann likes to come in and tell them they suck dick, you can't do shit about it, and I kind of like it. It kind of gets me going. Let's rock and roll, baby. And Dr. Carl Wallstorm Jr. so far has not been that entertaining. Has not been that even that good, really. My least favorite expert so far. And I don't no ill will or personal shade towards the man, but it is what it is.
He did not describe his home life as comfortable.
I asked about the home. I'm talking about the physical dwelling. Did you talk about the physical dwelling?
He did mention the physical dwelling.
What did he tell you about the physical dwelling?
That there were a lot of woods around his house, and I think he generally described it as a pleasant surrounding.
Tell you it was about 1.25 acres.
Something
It had
like
a
that.
pond in front of it. Did he tell you that he was ever subjected to sexual abuse by
That
anyone?
would be interesting, Megsy. Seeing McCain, I'm not sure if I'm saying that wrong or right. Probably butchering it both ways. But questioning Dahmer on the stand, that'd be very interesting.
No, he did not.
Did he ever tell you that he was subjected to physical abuse by anybody?
Yes, he did.
And by within the home?
No, he didn't.
In other words, neither the father or the mother subjected him to physical abuse of any kind.
He said that they did not.
With respect to the jogger, the incident involving the jogger, did he tell you that he intended to kill that jogger or that he intended to render him unconscious?
He told me that he intended to kill him.
And did you make a note of that in your
Yes.
notes? And with respect to the individual Hicks that he picked up, the hitchhiker, he told you that as he was what did he tell you in connection with that?
That this was a time when his mother had left the household and his father was no longer living there. It was a week interim period. He was all alone, and that he was out driving, not with the intention of picking anyone up, but he suddenly saw a hitchhiker who was not wearing a shirt, by my recollection, drove past him initially and then came back and picked him up.
And did he tell you that he felt he had the power of choice whether to proceed to kill him or not at that time?
Yes, he did.
And he chose to kill him?
Yes, he did.
And that was in what month of what year, if you recollect?
I don't have that right in front of me.
Do you want to check it in your notes?
78, maybe. I have 678.
That would be June of 1978. He tell you after that he went to Ohio State University?
Yes, he did.
And certainly at Ohio State University, one would be exposed to many thousands of handsome young men of desirable physique, would they not?
I would not doubt that statement.
Have you ever visited Columbus and the Ohio State University?
No, I haven't.
It's a major land-grant college in Ohio, and there are many thousands of students attend there. Would you anticipate that Mr. Dahmer would be exposed to people there that he would find attractive?
I would think so.
And yet he chose not to slay any of them. Isn't that true?
There's no report that he did slay anyone.
Well, you believe he did slay somebody?
I say that there is no report that he did, and he did not say that he did.
My question to you, sir, is do you believe that he slayed someone while he was at Ohio State University?
I have no opinion on that.
You have no opinion?
No.
Did he tell you that he lived in a dormitory?
I can't recall.
He did, sir. Okay. And the fact that would mean that relatively young men of the same age would be quite physically proximate. Wouldn't that be true? In
Yes.
a dormitory. After that, he went into the United States Army. Is that correct?
Yes, he did.
And do you recall when it was that he started in the Army?
When exactly he started in the
Yes.
Army? No, I don't recall a month.
Let us say December of 1978. And he was in the Army for several years, was he not?
About 3.5 years.
Was it 3.5 or 2.5?
I think it's 3.5.
And when did he get out?
I don't have that in front of me.
Pardon?
I don't have that date in front of me.
And during that period of time, he lived in a barracks, is that correct?
Yes.
And most of the persons that would be in the Army at that time, one can safely assume, would be young men at above his age, somewhat below it, but there would be thousands of young men that he would come into contact with, some slightly, some more extensively, while in the Army. Is that correct?
That would be true.
And during that time, he killed no person, did he?
He says he didn't.
He says he didn't. Do you believe he did, or do you believe he didn't?
I have no knowledge that he did.
In forming your opinion, did you assume that he did or did not kill anybody when he was in the military?
I assumed that he did not.
During that time, he conformed with the law and exercised control. Is that correct? Control of himself?
He had a serious problem with drinking toward the end, that's for sure.
But he did not kill anyone. Is that correct?
Not that we know about.
Right. Well, and you believe he didn't, don't you?
I have no reason to doubt it.
Right. And that means that he was exercising control over whatever his desires were in that regard, doesn't it?
Yes, it would.
And he said that he relieved some of his sexual needs. Did he tell you how he did that?
Through masturbation, and he discovered some pornography.
And he used pornography and masturbation to deal with his sexual needs. Is that correct?
Yes.
And when did he get out of the Army?
I don't have that exact date.
What did he do after he got out of the Army?
He went to Florida.
And where?
I believe Miami.
And along what street did he take up residence?
I do not know.
Have you ever been on Collins Avenue in Miami Beach?
Not that I'm aware of.
Right. He did talk about sleeping on the beach, did he not?
I think he mentioned that.
Right. And one on the beach, you know how long he stayed in Florida?
I think I remember something like 6 months, but I don't know.
It'd be from March of '81 to September of '81 approximately.
Okay.
And during that time, of course, that would include Easter time. If it was a late Easter, it would certainly include the summer of 1981. One would assume that on the beaches of Florida, particularly near a major city like Miami, one would see thousands of attractive young men with their shirts off on the beaches of that city. Would you not assume that, sir?
Yes, I would assume that.
And Mr. Dahmer would have been exposed to seeing those thousands of men. He states he never killed anyone during that time, didn't he?
That's what he states, yes.
Do you believe him or you disbelieve him?
I believe that he also stated that he was struggling against urges during those times.
But he controlled those urges, didn't he?
Yes.
He did not kill anyone. He conformed his conduct to the requirements of the law, didn't he?
Yes.
He then returned to Ohio in September of 1981. Is that correct? Check your notes if you wish. Go take your time and
Check your damn notes. Huh? Check the notes.
your notes.
I dare you to check your notes. Don't fuck around, boys and girls. Look at him. Look at him. Look at him.
What was the date that you gave?
Part of 1981, he returned to Ohio from Miami.
Yeah, I may have a wrong date because I have a discharge date in the Army of the 26th in 82, and that may not be right.
It isn't right.
Okay.
It isn't right.
I'm telling you like it is, baby.
Ohio.
Told y'all.
That is from Miami. Do your notes indicate that?
It's not in my report.
Pardon?
That exact date is not in my report.
At any rate, he was, for a period of time, he was at the home, the family home in Ohio, Bath, Ohio. Is
Yes.
that correct? During that time, did he kill anybody?
No, he didn't.
And you believe he did not. Is that correct?
I'm assuming that he did not.
And when did he go to Milwaukee, or particularly to West Allis, Wisconsin?
I don't have that exact date in front of me.
When do you think it was, approximately?
82.
In late of 1981, early 1982, took up residence with his grandmother. Is that correct? In West Allis? Mm-hmm. And then for a period from then until 1987, did not kill anybody, did he? For that period of time, from late December of 1981 to November of 1987.
That's correct.
That's almost a period of 6 solid years, is it not?
That would be yes.
And if one were to go back from the time he enlisted in the Army in December of '78 until November of '87, we're talking about almost 9 full years, aren't we?
Yes.
During that time, you say, did he have any fantasies about killing people?
Yes.
And during that time, he handled all those fantasies and controlled them, did he not?
He struggled to resist and was successful.
So just so you understand, he's talking about desire, aren't we? About desire to have sex, and first with an unconscious person, is that correct?
We're talking about thoughts about having necrophilic activity.
Right. And tell us what his fantasy was, would you tell us? What he described, did it change from The time of Hicks until the time of 1987, did he tell you whether it changed or not?
No. I mean, it did not change.
What was it? What was the fantasy? Would you tell the jury what this fantasy was?
The fantasy was an attractive male of a certain physique that would not leave him. He wished to control that individual. He wished to have sex with that individual.
That was it?
He wished to keep that individual with him. He did not believe that that individual could ever stay, so he felt that killing was the only way to keep that individual.
Did he talk about having that individual unconscious?
He talked about deriving pleasure at times from having an unconscious victim.
Did he talk about how we would kill that person?
Are you talking now about how he actually did or how he
No,
fantasized?
what the fantasy said.
No.
Didn't you ask him what the fantasy says about killing?
No, I didn't.
That would seem to me to be a very profoundly important question. You knew that he had killed 17 men when you met him, and he was talking about a fantasy. Didn't you ask him, what does your fantasy say about the killing?
I think I answered the question.
You didn't ask him that question?
I know what he did,
I'm asking you what the fantasy was.
and I answered the question.
The answer is you didn't ask him.
That's correct.
Did he tell you how he was going to kill them in any way? What the fantasy was, how he would kill them?
No, he did not.
And you never asked him?
That's correct.
For a period from December of 1981, when he arrived in West Allis, to November of 1987, he went through one period where he came under the influence of his grandmother, and to a good extent, according to his description, sought the straight and narrow life. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Did he talk to you about that?
Yes, he did.
He told you that he started, under the grandmother's influence, reading the Bible, started to go to church. Is that correct?
Yes.
Cut back on his drinking. Maybe he gave up drinking. Do you recall whether he said he
He
gave it
said
up?
he gave it up for a while.
He gave it up. And during that time, he did not become, he said he cut back substantially on masturbating. Is that correct?
Yes.
And during that time, he committed no offenses, at least particularly under the grandmother's influence. Is that true?
During that period of time, he did not commit any offenses.
And then there came a period of time where he started to slip back into, or started to go down to porn shops, pornography shops, and started to visit bathhouses. Is that correct?
Yes, that attempt to repress himself at his grandmother's did not last.
Do you recall when it was that he said when he started to backslide into other activities?
Yes, I do.
When was that?
He said he was sitting in a library and that someone dropped a note into his lap saying that, meet me down in the basement for a blowjob. And he did not do that, but that stimulated him and started him thinking about sexual thoughts again.
And the sexual thoughts create what is attractive to him because of the desire for the dead body. It creates a sexual desire, does it not?
That's what he said.
Yeah. And did you believe him?
Yes.
And the sexual desire is sexual desire different from one person to another? The object of it certainly is, but if a person feels a sexual interest, if you see a person there that you're attracted to, you get sexually excited about it, you may experience some tumescence in your portions of your body, that's how a normal person is sexually excited. Is that true?
Sexual arousal occurs all the time, sure.
And whether the object is an unconscious man or the object is a conscious, attractive woman, the sexual phenomenon, the attraction is basically the same. Not the object that's attracted, but the reaction to the person that's being attracted is about the same, is it not?
You're saying that they get aroused? They get.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
And sexual desire for a woman and sexual desire for an unconscious man are basically sexual desire. Isn't that true?
They are sexual desire.
There isn't anything absolutely unique about Mr. Dahmer's sexual desire except that the object of it was an unconscious man.
What was a dead man?
Which did he say he preferred, live or dead?
He said that he preferred having sex with the insides of the bodies. That was a 10 out of 10. That's what he told me.
Did he tell you whether he preferred live men?
He did not.
Trigger.
What did he say he preferred? The sex
All
with the
day.
inside of the body?
Yes.
And what was the second choice?
There was a tie with a dead body sex, other types of sex with a dead body or an unconscious body.
And those he said were his first choices.
No, he said he got the greatest sexual stimulation from having sex with the insides of a dead body.
And he told you that when? In December or early January? When did he tell you that?
He told it to me during one of my interviews. I can
You
find
know
the
when?
page.
What date that was?
Not unless I refer to my notes.
Take a minute and check.
Sure. That was on January 4th, 1992.
And he told you that was his first choice.
Yes.
What did he tell you was his second choice?
He said that those were equally sexually exciting, the drugged or dead male.
They were equally sexually exciting. A live, drugged man or a dead man?
But not an opened up man.
That would be first.
Yes.
So his second and third choices would be equal. An unconscious live man or a dead man. Is that correct?
That's what he said.
So whether you call it a tie or what is second choice, there were two for the second choice. Is that correct?
That would be two, yeah.
Now in terms of the, at least it appears in 85 and 86, he started to go to bathhouses. Is that correct?
That's right.
And he started, some men wanted to have anal sex with him, and he didn't want that. Is that correct? Is that what his complaint was?
That was one of his complaints.
And while he did not want it have done to him, he was willing to drug someone else and perform anal sex on that individual, wasn't he?
That's true.
That seems to me like a very selfish way to operate. Would you see it that way too?
I think that he wanted the control. I think he couldn't tolerate the possibility that if he said that he didn't want anal sex, that they would leave him.
Let me repeat my question. My question was that it was a very selfish way to operate, wasn't it?
Well, I think it was indicative of a mental disorder.
And strong sexual desire.
Right.
He wanted to have, the purpose was the sexual pleasure he was going to derive from it, was it not?
That was a purpose.
And he proceeded to do that a number of times in bathhouses in this city, did he not?
Yes.
And then did he tell you he was put out of the bathhouses for that?
I think I recall him saying that, yeah.
There's no question he knew it was wrong what he was doing. Isn't that true?
I think that that's a fair assessment, that he knew that that was not permitted or right.
Did he tell you that he lied to get the drugs? That he went to a physician and lied to get the drugs that he would use on these men?
He said that he had gone into physicians with complaints of sleep disturbance.
And that wasn't true, was it?
He did take the medications on occasion for sleep disturbance.
Doctor, I put it to you on your oath, did he tell you that his main purpose in going to the doctors was to get sleeping pills to drug men in bathhouses?
He said that he got sleeping pills on numerous occasions for the purpose of drugging males.
And that was his main purpose, wasn't it, in going to get those to those doctors, was to get drugs to drug people in bathhouses and later on in hotels. Isn't that true?
That's correct.
And after he was put out of the bathhouse, he started to go to several hotels, did he not? Did he tell you he went to
Yes.
several local hotels? Did he mention the Wisconsin and the Ambassador hotels?
He mentioned the ambassador.
And did he tell you how many people he took to those hotels and drugged in those hotels and had sex with?
I can't recall.
There came a time in November that he went with a man named, we've later learned was named Stephen Tuomi, is that correct?
Yes.
And did he tell you how he prepared to bring Mr. Tuomi to that hotel room?
He said that he planned to go with him for some, what he called frequently light sex, that drugging would be involved.
Did he tell you how he prepared for that?
I didn't mean to throw the thumbs when they showed Dahmer there. Bad timing.
Did he tell you that he got the pills and ground them at the Ambassador Hotel before he went out and looked for a man such as Tuomi?
He didn't tell me that.
Did you ask him?
No.
He returned with Twomey and he drugged Twomey then, did he not?
That's what he said he did.
And he woke up, he went, doesn't know precisely sure what happened, but he woke up and Twomey was dead in the bed with him, is that correct?
He said he was laying on top of Tommy and that he
Twomey
was
appeared
dead.
to be beaten in some fashion and Dahmer's arms appeared to have been black and blue.
That's correct.
Beyond that, he could not tell you what happened, is that correct?
That's
He took
right.
Twomey to his grandmother's house and not long, several days thereafter, dismembered him, is that correct?
Yes.
Did he tell you, did he enjoy dismembering or was he doing that to get rid of the body?
He said that he did not enjoy the dismembering.
He did not have a car available to him, did he?
No, he did not.
And it was necessary, he didn't want to leave the body in the Ambassador Hotel. That would have cast suspicion on him, wouldn't it?
It certainly could have.
So he got a suitcase and brought it to the grandmother's house.
Yes.
And then he got rid of it and actually watched the garbage men pick up the trash with Twomey's body in it. Would that be accurate?
He said he disposed of the body in the trash on the day that he knew the garbage was being picked up.
Did he tell you that he triple bagged the garbage?
Yes.
Did he tell you that in order to get rid of the large bones, he wrapped them in a sheet and pounded the bones with a sledgehammer?
Yes.
And in that fashion, he got rid of the flesh and bones of Stephen Twomey. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And he did not have a car, didn't want to leave the body in Grandma's driveway, obviously. And the dismembering and getting rid of the body was a way to get rid of the evidence, was it not?
Yes.
Then he says, after he said to a number of people, after the Ambassador Hotel, he stopped struggling or stopped making an effort with respect to the fantasy. Did he say some type of language to you along that line?
He felt he was no longer able to resist it.
So he ceased resisting, is that correct?
He no longer resisted.
And anybody that ceased resisting their sexual urges is going to have some problems, aren't they? Whether you like women, whether you like men, if you cease resisting your sexual urges, you're going to have some problems in life, aren't you?
Well, he certainly does.
And then he consciously set out to get the man, which resulted in the death of Mr. Dockstader. Is that correct?
That's correct.
He is no longer struggling or resisting against anyone. He has now become a hunter, has he not?
He describes a process whereby he plans to capture individuals for sexual purposes.
And he even gets the drugs and grinds the drugs a number of the times and gets it ready before he goes out to get them, doesn't he?
Yes.
And he drinks first, then too. He drinks, does he not?
He does drink, although he says not during the week when he's having the fantasies about doing it.
In other words, he fantasizes during the week about it. But he's got to work during the week, so he doesn't go out on weeknights. He only goes out on weekend nights when he doesn't have to work. Would that be accurate?
Yes.
So despite having the fantasy on work days, he neither drinks nor does he act on the fantasy because he's got to go to work.
Well, he does act insofar as he plans.
He plans it and has the drugs. If he needs to go out, he gets the drugs and lays his plans how he's going to get someone. Is that correct?
In a general way.
And then he goes out, doesn't have a car, but he goes out to a gay bar area looking for whom he will attempt to induce back to come to the house, isn't it? Isn't that what he does?
Yes.
And he waits till the time that the bar closing time. He identifies who he wants to select and waits till bar closing time to go up to that person. Wasn't that basically his procedure?
He said he would approach people at bar closings, although he met some of the people in other areas on the street and so forth.
I assume it's the same in Chicago as it is in Milwaukee. At bar closing time, you turn on the lights, all right, everybody out. And people go out, some of them mill on the street, and people are talking, and cars are pulling up, and things like that. Is that how things go in Chicago?
Well, I think it depends which bar.
At any rate,
It could happen.
all right, at any rate, it's at that point that he would go up and make his pitch, would he not?
That's when he would talk to people about coming back to his apartment with him.
And particularly with Dockstader, he either road? Did he take a bus out or a cab out with Mr. Dockstader?
I don't recall.
In any event, whenever he took a cab and the time, did you go through each of the slayings with him?
Yes.
Would you think it professional not to go through each of the slayings with him? Would you attempt to provide a formal analysis to this court of Mr. Dahmer without going through each slaying?
I thought it was important to go through each slaying.
And you would think less of a professional who didn't go through each slaying in a 15-count slaying. Would that be true?
I think that if someone was describing a self-serving, aberrant pattern that they said was unchanged on the next victim or the next few victims, that the degree of depth wouldn't be the same as if it was very different in every case, or if there was just one case or two cases.
Well, there were differences in each of these cases, weren't there? In many of them. Did he strangle each man to death with his hands?
No.
Did he used a strap in some cases, did he not?
Yes.
About how many? Do you recollect?
No.
Did he use another weapon on at least one occasion?
Yes.
And what was that?
A knife.
And on whom did he do that?
I don't recall.
And he claimed several died afterwards that he didn't intend to kill, but by virtue of what he did to them. Do you recall that?
I didn't hear the question.
He's claimed that several other men died, not by his intentional act of killing, but by virtue of something he did to them.
That's correct.
So there wasn't, you can't say, look at these and say there's a static pattern of what he did in these incidences, is there?
There are different patterns.
And a person who is a careful professional would go through each slaying to see how close he adhered to a pattern or didn't he. Would that be accurate?
Well, I can speak for what I did.
Did you do that in each case?
Yes.
And that's what you've been trained to do, is it not true?
Yes.
With respect to Mr. Dockstader, if he took the bus out, they went to the home, he had some sex with them, got the drug involved either before or after the sex, and eventually strangled him to death. Is that correct?
Yes.
Was Mr. Dockstader a 15-year-old boy?
I don't have his age right in front of me.
And then he went out several months later and made contact with a man named Richard Guerrero, did he not?
Yes, he did.
And was that also at a downtown tavern or club, at least on the near south side?
Check that.
Talking now about the second incident.
Going to the next round here. McCain don't fuck around.
I met him at a place called the 219 Club.
And what did he do with him?
Well, he killed him.
Okay, did he drug him? Did you indicate how he got home with him?
Cab.
Got home by cab. Did he tell you why he didn't have a car? Did you ask him about a car?
I think he said he had never had a car.
Didn't have what?
I think he said he had never had a car.
Is there any discussion by you with him about how he would target particular victims, whether they had cars or not?
No, there wasn't.
Did you know, sir, Did you learn from him that he always targeted men that didn't have a car, or at least didn't have a car that was operating? Did you know that?
I subsequently learned that that's the case. In one case, someone was trying to start a car, apparently.
You subsequently learned that. Did you learn that from the defendant?
I either learned it in reading through some of these voluminous records or my notes. I'm not sure where I learned it.
Did you learn that, in fact, from something that you secured through one of the other psychiatrists prepared for by the state? Do you recall if that's where you first saw that? Did you get the reports of Dr. Fosdell and Dr. Dietz?
Yes.
And up to that time, had you realized that the defendant always cunningly took someone, a victim, that didn't have a car or didn't have a car that was operating?
I don't know when I learned it.
Did he tell you that during the time, 3 or 4 times that you spoke with him?
I don't recall that ever coming up.
It shows a great deal of cunning, does it not? So that there would be, as he would told one of our psychiatrists, so that there wouldn't be a car around for the police to find.
Okay.
Does that suggest cunning to you?
Does suggest cunning.
And does his failure to tell you that suggest that he wasn't entirely candid with you?
No, it may suggest my failure to ask him the question.
Would that be due to your inexperience, do you think?
No, I don't.
If his first preference was sex with the inside of bodies, you did not mention that in your report, did you?
No, I didn't.
Did you deliberately choose not to mention that?
No.
Did you fail to mention, did you think it unimportant, what his choice was?
Well, I have over 75 pages of notes. It's not an exact, my report is not an exact transcript of what transpired. You got my notes, it's in my notes. I read from you from my notes.
You did not put that within your notes, however.
It is in my notes.
No, but you didn't put that within your report, did you?
No, I didn't.
They're in my damn notes, bro.
If he preferred...
Did you even look?
I'm telling you like it is, baby.
insides of dead bodies, he nevertheless preferred to keep people alive by making them zombies, did he not?
He talked at one point about planning and carrying that out.
And he told you that he didn't want them to die. He wanted them around. Your report says that. He wants them around. That's right out of your report, isn't it?
That's the point he got to at victim number, at Earl Lindsay.
And did you ask him, Mr. Dahmer, if your first choice is the insides of persons you've slit open, why is it then that you chose to try to keep them alive as zombies? Did you put such a question to him?
No, I didn't.
Yes, it is, Leanne.
Somewhat to you.
Well, he derived pleasure from a live drug.
Only got a minute left of this video, but that will be coming soon, at least on my end as well, Leanne.
Body that was incapacitated, as well as deriving pleasure from a dead body. 8 out of 10, 10 out of 10 is still, it's still pleasure. And he didn't like killing, and he wanted to keep him alive and in a zombie state.
And when he had to kill, he claimed at least that he was aversive to that he didn't enjoy killing.
That's correct.
And that he would tell you would have to drink. One particular instance, two instances he speaks about particularly getting drinks before he could kill somebody. Did he tell you that?
He talked about not liking it and drinking at times to overcome that dislike.
Did he tell you particularly with respect to Ernest Miller? That's the man that he stabbed, isn't it?
Let me check my notes.
Did you look that up, Ernest Miller? Because I'm going to ask you several questions about that.
Okay, wait on. It's about time we should take a break. Why don't we take a break and we can look that up during the recess then? Court's in recess.
Oh, first video of the day down. They're going right into part 3, which is about an hour and 39 minutes. We're going to roll right into that. Yeah, people in the chat, thank you all for hanging out, being here. Appreciate the hell out of it. Full house yet again. Loving it. Loving it. Conversation booming. If you're just hanging out in the background lurking, we appreciate you being here. Yeah, we love lurkers also. Please hit that like, guys. Helps us out. Love it. Thank you. I'm going to hit a stinger, and we'll be rolling right back into here. Give me 1 second. Woo! Murder Church rolls on as, and let me also post the link one more time. 3 shirts have been released by Austin again this morning. Again, once these are gone, folks, they are gone. These are a, Feral Friday variant that are only here until the end of today. Again, these are custom and handmade by Austin Rains, who is in the chat here. And, we sold out of these on Friday night. And there's also some other, there's another print, the acid wash print, that is still up there. I believe there's 4 of those left. So they did sell rather quickly and awesomely, and cannot say how much we thank and appreciate everyone that came through and bought those shirts. Holy fucking shit. Absolutely amazing launch on the new badass acid print shirts. Let's see here, folks. Let's keep rocking and rolling.
Be seated, please.
Could I have a last question?
You want the last question read back?
Yes, I think. It was about Ernest Miller, I know. About Ernest Miller, and he started to look for his...
Did he tell you that Ernest Miller, that's the man that he stabbed, isn't it? And then you said, would you like to look that up, because I'm going to ask you several questions.
With respect to Ernest Miller, did you pull out that portion of your file?
Yes.
This morning there was testimony from Dr. Becker of how confirming that he said before he stabbed him he had to get some drink. He had to drink some alcohol to bring himself to do it. Did he tell you that? First of all, did he tell you that he stabbed Mr. Miller?
Yes, he did.
All right. Did he tell you what preceded it?
He said that he had drugged the body. Drugged him. That he had drugged Mr. Miller.
Then what?
That he thought that he was too strong or would possibly wake up, and that he stabbed him.
But he did not tell you that he... Did you ask him whether he went and got alcohol first, or did he just not discuss that with you?
Let me see if I did.
But Kane ain't done. He ain't done with him yet. Picks him up by the hair of the head, throws him off the ropes, clothesline!
I don't see that I did ask him that.
Alcohol is one of the major ways that people impair their controls. Isn't that so?
It is certainly so.
Widespread, whether it's a control of anger.
I'm going to walk backwards into the smoke. Give me 1 second.
But an angry person, in your experience, do burglars use it before they go out? Knock down their inhibitions with alcohol and go out and pull a job? Have you seen that happen in your experience?
That certainly has happened.
And persons that get involved with carrying out their sexual, not uncommon to take drink and knock down the inhibitions and go out and do something sexual, is it?
At times, people are very well documented that they have done that, yes.
And it's a way that a person can consciously impair their controls, isn't it?
It can be a way to reduce inhibitions.
And inhibitions are what rises up to tell you not to do something, right? When you have an inhibition against killing someone, something inside you is saying, don't do it. Am I right? But if you want to fondle their dead body, you don't want to kill them, but you want to play with their dead body. You overcome that inhibition that says, don't do it. You take some alcohol, overcome it, and then you kill them. Take the knife and stab them in the neck. That's one way to overcome inhibitions, isn't it? To take alcohol to do it.
That is one way to overcome inhibitions.
Did he discuss with you the Ronald Flowers incident, the defendant?
Yes, he did.
Right, and that was a gentleman that, again, he met at one of the downtown taverns. Is that correct?
I believe so.
This man couldn't get his car started. Do you recall that? Did he tell you that? Mm-hmm. And Mr. Dahmer volunteered that he would jump start for him, didn't he?
Yes.
Did Mr. Dahmer have the resources to somehow get a car to jump start Mr. Flowers' car?
I don't know.
Did you ask him?
No.
But did Flowers indicate, the report on Flowers that you had indicated that that's how Dahmer induced him to go out to Dahmer's house?
Yes.
With the understanding that Dahmer would get a car and jump started.
Yes.
Is that correct? And Mr. Flowers went out to the house with him. Was it a cab, I believe, they drove out to the house? Is that correct?
I don't recall how they got to the house.
Well, that's important. Mr. Flowers is going to testify. Going to testify that the cab, he got out of the cab a couple of blocks from the Dahmer's house. Did you explore that with the defendant?
He did speak at times about not being let off right at the exact location of his address, yes.
Did you ask him, Mr. Dahmer, in common sense, why didn't you take the cab right to your house?
Well, I think there's not a question about the fact that he knew it was wrong.
And what was wrong?
What he had planned to do.
Did you recognize that was part of his scheme, or did that just occur to you later after you had talked to him?
How do you mean?
That he would get out of cabs. Did you realize that he would do that consistently, get out of the cab several blocks from his house?
I don't know that if I knew it consistently, but I think on occasion he mentioned that.
Did you recognize that as a rather cunning pattern to conceal where you were or where you were going?
I think it would conceal it.
And Mr. Flowers, the report says, they got out and walked a block or two to the Dahmer household. Is that correct? And went in, and eventually, suddenly, Mr. Flowers has some coffee, and Mr. Flowers is unconscious. Is that correct?
Okay.
And had Mr. Dahmer prepared the pills before he went out to get Flowers that night?
I don't recall.
Did you ask him?
I don't recall.
This was a somewhat important incident, isn't it, in terms of control? Is it in your mind at all?
Uh-oh. Caught me slipping. CR coming through with the 99-cent 100 sticker. Thank you very much. Give me the loot. Give me the loot. Boom. Love it. I'm going to give you a gun country just for fun.
This is gun country.
Thank you so much. CR. Absolute OG CR as well. CR's been coming through here for a long-ass time. Always showing love. Always showing support. Thank you so much, CR. Absolutely amazing. Long-time producer of this content. Also down here, catching me slipping. Lakota coming through. Boom. What's up? Thank you so much. Give me the loot. Love it. You going to get both? Boom. And it's been a minute since we've done it. I did early this morning. I'm going to do it again. A little Jim Leahy to just set us right. Just to set us straight.
I'm sober enough to know what I'm doing, and I'm drunk enough to really enjoy doing it.
Thank you guys so much. Hanging out. Adding to the collection plate. Absolutely amazing. Beers in the chat as well, folks. Beers in the chat as well. Love it. Murder Church rolls on.
I think it follows a pattern.
Mr. Dahmer was going to make a decision that night not to kill Mr. Flowers, wasn't he?
He did not kill Mr. Flowers.
Right? And did he do it? Did he make a decision whether to kill or not to kill? What do you think was in Mr. Dahmer's mind? He had already slayed, he had lured and Doc Stater out there and...
Every single day, McCain wakes up, chooses violence, folks.
slayed him at the grandmother's house after he drugged him. He lured Guerrero out there, drugged him and slayed him at the grandmother's house. Why do you think he lured Flowers out there? Did it occur to you, Doctor, what he may have had in mind?
Yes.
What, he's going to kill him, don't you think?
Yes.
He didn't kill him, though, did he?
No, he didn't.
He made a decision not to kill him. That's the point. Did you recognize that? That he made a decision that night not to kill Mr. Flowers?
I think that something interrupted that plan to kill Mr. Flowers.
The grandmother somehow found out that another man was there, didn't she?
Yes.
And he decided not to kill Mr. Flowers, didn't he?
That interrupted his plan to kill Mr. Flowers.
And he made a decision not to kill him. He got him unconscious, didn't he?
I'm a little bit behind, as you can see. I just got to the fondle.
There's no question he got
I gotta go
Flowers
down there and make sure
unconscious.
nothing crazy's happening.
And he
Okay.
had sex with Flowers.
Thank you, guys.
And thereafter, he gave...
We're not getting any responses on the record.
I'm sorry, he's nodding.
Yeah.
He made a decision not to kill Mr. Flowers, didn't he?
He did not kill
Loves to
Mr.
fight
Flowers.
every expert. Just put McCain in a ring with every single one of them at the same time. Handicap match. Boom. He's ready to go. Let's do it. Let's do it. You all suck. None of you deserve to be here. I'm the only true professional. I will ask the questions, folks. I can't say he's not entertaining as hell, though. And he's right, actually. I mean, he's aggressive as hell. But still, I mean,
Doctor,
I'm on his side.
just answer me.
But also, he is abusing a lot of the experts for no reason, I feel like. Because, I mean, the experts just, they have their opinions as well, right? I mean, it's a crazy one. We have to step back and look at it for what it is at the end of the day. What is it? It's an insanity trial. This man's either going to prison. We know what happened. I've said this time and time again at this point. But at this point in time, as we step back into the past, in the time machine that we're in every Sunday morning on Murder Church, you know, is he going to go to the hospital or is he going to prison? You know, the experts have their opinions as well, and so far the defense are bringing these guys here to try to help Jeffrey Dahmer out. You know, however we see fit in today's time period. We know what happened, right? We all still carry those opinions, but it's interesting. McCann's like, listen, but he's also adding a fuckface at the end. Listen, fuckface, professionally.
He made a decision not to kill Mr. Flowers, didn't he?
His grandmother seeing the Mr. Flowers interrupted that completion of that fantasy.
Let me put the question again. He made a decision not to kill Mr. Flowers, didn't he?
That interrupted that plan.
Let me put the question again. He made a decision not to kill Mr. Flowers, didn't he?
He did not kill him.
But I asked the court to direct the witness.
Court will direct the witness to answer the question if he's able to do so.
I feel that I've
Coming to shop next week, fuckface fondler shirts. Be on the lookout.
answered as well as I can.
You can't answer that, beyond what you said. Is it because you feel so partisanly favored to the defendant that you
Not at
can't
all.
answer that question?
I think I'm answering what I think happened.
At any rate, Mr. Flowers was not killed. Is that correct?
Yes.
The defendant continued then, did he not, with his particular activities? On September 27, 1988, did he lure a young man into his apartment? He had left the grandmother's house and secured an apartment, had he not?
What was the date?
September 27. Actually, it was September 26, 1988. September 26, 1988.
Yes.
A young man named SS. We're using those initials because he was a juvenile. Do you recall how old he was?
No, I don't.
Why not? Did you ask him how old he was?
I'm not sure who you're referring to right now.
I'm referring to, sorry, whisper the name. Let's see. Would you lean over here?
They're fighting. They're going. They're standing up. Oh, he whispered the name in his ear there. Protect the the juvenile.
Do you have that in front of you? Do you have that?
I am aware of who you're speaking about.
All right.
Yeah.
On September 26, 1988, he lured a 13-year-old boy into his dwelling near at 808 North 24th Street. Is that correct?
Yes.
Mr. Dahmer did. And told the young man he was going to give him $50 if he would pose for pictures. Is that right?
That's what's stated in his account.
And that's the same story he had given to Doc Stater and Guerrero. The money may have been different, but that's basically the same story. Is that
Yes.
correct? And he lured this young man into his home, making such a promise.
Yes.
And he asked the young man to pose, and then he gave the young man a drink, coffee with some cream mixed into it, or Irish cream. Is that correct?
He gave him a drink. Yeah.
And there was pills in that drink, weren't there?
Yes.
And he intended to drug that young man, didn't he?
Yes.
He was to deny that later to different people, but that's what he intended to do, wasn't it? You're satisfied of that?
Yes.
Right. And what happened then? Do you recall?
Yes. He, at one point, told this young man that he wanted to listen to his belly, and he put his head up to his belly and what I'm assuming was trying to listen to his heart again.
This was sexual overtones to it. Would you recognize it as such?
It sounds like necrophilic overtones.
Sexual, definitely. No question about that. Is that correct?
Well, I think that it's consistent with what the last intended victim said to me.
And in terms of what then transpired was the young man became alarmed, didn't he?
Yes.
And the drug had not yet taken effect. It was almost upon him. Indeed, shortly after he left home, he began to feel sick right away. Is that correct?
I thought that he said he did start to feel something.
Right there in the dwelling.
That's what I recall.
And he got up to leave, did he not?
Yes.
And at that point, beginning to feel sick, he went to the door. Mr. Dahmer said he was going to pay him. Gave him some. The boy remembered getting some money, but never knew what happened to that money. Is that correct?
That I don't recall.
In any event, when Mr. Dahmer, did you ask Mr. Dahmer what he intended when he invited that young man, SS, into his dwelling on September 26, 1988?
He said it was to take photographs.
And did he need the drug to take the photographs?
I wouldn't think that he would.
What did he tell you he intended to do with the young man?
He didn't say anything beyond that.
Did you ask him?
Yes.
What did he say?
I intended to take photographs.
Did you ask him why didn't you kill the young man?
I know that there was, that this was during the week, and that his fantasy was spending much more time with the victim.
Did you ask him whether he intended to kill him?
He said he did not.
Dr. Berlin, strike that. It was Dr. Berlin. Dr. Berlin said it was his opinion that he intended to kill him. That he intended to kill SS. I'm sorry. That it was Dr. Berlin indicated he believed that on that particular day the defendant intended to kill that young man.
Okay.
Did you believe that? What is your opinion?
I think he did.
And
I think he got stimulated by the young man, and then I think that's what interrupted it was that he realized that he couldn't complete what he wanted to do.
And he wanted to kill him and decided not to kill him. Is that what happened?
Something interrupted it.
The young man got up to leave. Is that what you mean?
No, because I think that he could have overpowered him. He let him go.
I think he could have overpowered him too. He decided to let him go. Is that correct?
He let him go.
He gave him drugs, started down the path, and then pulled back.
That's correct.
Did you ask him why he pulled back?
I believe it was because he had to go to work.
And do you believe that's why he stopped himself from killing the young man, because he thought, hey, I got to go to work tonight?
I think that he was stimulated by the young man and went into a pattern that had become repetitive and compelling, and that something interrupted that pattern, and I think that it was that he had to be at work.
He decided, I've got to be to work, and decided to exercise control and to get to work rather than getting the sexual pleasure. He decided, gee, I got to get to work, and I'll stop it and let him go. Is that safely how he described the decision he made, in your opinion?
I would need to review exactly what he said.
The judge is done. He's like, yeah. I like the judge, though.
Did you, for a person who is, you've indicated psychosis, you thought he was suffering from psychosis.
That's correct.
Would the pressure of a...
I mean, being, day after day, we have the week break here on the Murder Church, right? Being day after day into this and being a part of the jury would be absolutely brutal, horrible. Couldn't even imagine. At this point, you would probably be checking out, right? It was like, you've heard this so many different times. You've heard, yes, you're getting a different variation of opinions on it by different people, but my God, how many times can you hear these horrible, horrible details and you're sitting there with the individual, right? I mean,
sentencing for, he was eventually brought before the court on May 23, 1989 to be sentenced, was he not?
Sentenced on 5/23/89?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Did you ever read that sentencing transcript?
I can't recall.
I want to read it to you. He's facing 20 years on 2 counts. I think you saw the complaint. It's enticing because he lured the boy off the street, and a second count because he touched the boy. So he's facing 20 years, which I think would be an extremely stressful experience for an individual. Would you think so?
Yes.
He'd already been convicted on the indecent exposure, which was reduced to disorderly conduct. Now he's facing 20 years. Are you aware that the probation department was recommending that he be sentenced to heavy time? Were you aware of that?
I did read the pre-sentence investigation.
And the pre-sentence investigation calls, as I recall, for substantial time, does it not?
I could check that. I know it says a lot of things.
Okay, but basically in terms of the conclusion, what they're recommending imprisonment, were they not?
They were. They had also consulted with some mental health experts, specifically Dr. Rosen again, who said that this was a very sick individual who needed hospitalization.
Right. Dr. Rosen also said he was not psychotic. Isn't that accurate? Dr. Rosen has never said he was psychotic, did she?
She felt he was ill enough that he needed to be in the hospital.
And she said he wouldn't cooperate, that he would not cooperate. Isn't that true?
She said that at an earlier time that she did not feel that he had benefited.
Right, because did she describe, you read her notes, he came in and actually sat in the room and turned his back to her when she was trying to help him. That's what he did, didn't he?
He's struggling.
She actually saw him several times before the Tuomi death, didn't she? She saw him in October and November before the Tuomi death, did she not?
Yes.
Do you think, does a man have any responsibility that says he's being troubled by fantasies?
Opened up Adobe there for you.
Of killing someone, and he is referred by a court to a psychologist? Does he have any obligation to say, look, I'm getting these fantasies. I need some help because I'm thinking about killing somebody. Do you think he has any obligation to do that?
I think that would have been a good time to do it.
But you know he chose not to do that.
I know he didn't do it.
Let me read from the sentencing. Now, this is a man that I think you believe is psychotic. I'd like to read. Tell me if you see any evidence of psychosis from this. The court is talking to him. Asked if he wants would like to make a statement, Mr. Dahmer, about yourself or about the sentencing. They talk about, it says he's an alcoholic and that he had been in the military. He goes on to say the following. The prosecution has raised very serious charges against me, and I can understand why. What I've done is very serious. I never I never meant to give anyone the impression that I thought otherwise. I've never been in this position before. Nothing this awful. This is a nightmare come true for me. If anything would shock me out of my past behavior patterns, it's this. The one thing I have in my mind that is stable and that gives me some source of pride is my job. I've come very close to losing it because of my actions, which I take full responsibility for. I'm the one to blame for all of this. What I've done has cut both ways. It's hurt the victim and it's hurt me. It's a no-win situation. All I can do is beg you, please spare my job. Please give me a chance to show that I can tread the straight and narrow and not get involved in any situation like this ever again. I would not only ask, I beg you, please don't destroy my life. I know I deserve a great deal of punishment. I'm not trying to elicit your sympathy, but I would ask you, please, don't wipe me out completely. And then did he go on in that to say, about the court asked about adult males' relationship. I have had in the past, not recently. This enticing a child was the climax of my idiocy. It's going to destroy me, I'm afraid, this one incident. I don't know what in the world I was thinking when I did it. I know I was under the influence. Listen carefully to this. As far as purposely drugging him, that was never my intention. I've been taking sleeping pills because I worked the third shift for several years now. I take quite a few of them because I built up a tolerance to them, and it was never my intention to purposely drug him. I wouldn't have offered him money if I had planned on drugging him, but nevertheless, I'm not trying to excuse what I did. Does that sound like a psychotic person talking?
A person who's psychotic may at any time sound very rational.
From what you read there, from what I read to you, does that sound like a psychotic person?
If he wrote it, in fact, then it sounds like there's a coherent logic to it, a pleading to get out.
And it's in response to questions by the judge.
Yes.
Wow, that was interesting.
That was rather manipulative bunch of lies, wasn't it? He intentionally drugged them. There's no doubt in your mind about that, is there?
No.
The then period.
Yeah, that's the line right there, right? Between the insane, out of your fucking mind, going to a hospital, or knowing what the fuck you're doing insane, right? The motherfucker's out of his head, but he's lying about it. He knows that it's going to hurt his life. He knows that it's going to alter his entire existence on this planet, right? So he's lying, and then when he's actually acting, he's hiding the bodies. He's very manipulative. That's the line, honestly, to why this motherfucker needed to be in prison and why what happened, the fuck happened. I mean,
I'm telling you like it is, baby.
I don't know.
A period of almost a year to the next death, is that correct? It was 3 days short of a year till the next slaying, am I right?
That's correct.
Pardon?
Yes.
During that time, the defendant spent about some 9 months or so in the House of Correction on work release. Do you know what work release means?
Yes, I do.
The House of Correction, the portion he attended is kitty corner from here. He worked at a place 4 or 5 blocks east of the House of Correction.
Okay.
Was released on holidays occasionally.
With all due respect,
Yeah.
I don't think that's an accurate statement on holidays, on occasions. I think if the question's going to be asked, it's got to be more specific.
I think,
A holiday,
isn't a record that he was
Good
released
seeing you, Heather. Good morning.
on Thanksgiving?
one holiday, not holidays on occasion.
Bo gonna pop in and he's gonna be like, hey, listen, he's not a bad guy. He's all right. He's a good guy. Look at him. He's all right. He's okay. He's just hanging. He didn't mean any of that. He made a few mistakes. Get the straitjacket in here. I'll concede to that. I understand, but he's an all right individual. I've had some conversations. The judge is like, fuck everything, bro. Get the fuck out of my face,
Was he
Boyle.
released on a daily basis, 5 days a week at least, basically, during that time? Was your understanding?
That was my understanding, to go to work, yes.
Right. And for a period of 3 days short of a year, he was about 9 months on that probation. He then wrote the judge and got released early.
I'm
didn't he?
getting up.
Are you aware of that?
Yes.
And he was released early, didn't serve a full year, served about 9 months of time. And during the interval from roughly the March or so when he was released to May 20th, 90, he was not under any controls other than reporting to a probation officer. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
For that period of that year, while he was being released daily, 5 days a week, and then the 3-month period after full release, he did not kill anyone, did he?
What period of time was that?
I'm talking from the time of the sentencing, May 23, 1989.
Uh-huh.
In terms of actual death, it went from March 25, 1989, when he killed Mr. Sears, March 25, 1989, until May 20th, 1990. He killed no one in that interval, am I right?
Yes.
So that is actually about roughly 14 months, a little over 14 months. Would that be right?
Yes.
In that 14-month interval, he killed no one. He exercised, did the fantasies continue as far as you know?
Yes.
And he exercised control and conformed to the law during that time, did he not?
Yes, he did.
He had a number of meetings with his probationary officer, and various help was offered him during that time. Is that accurate?
Yes, and he took advantage of some of that help.
He went to DePaul, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
And he did not cooperate. He attended the meetings, but continued to drink on the weekends. Would that be an accurate summary of what he was doing?
I think it's a distortion to say he did not cooperate. He was discharged as improved from DePaul.
But do you
All
think...
his drug screens, with the exception of 1 or 2, were completely clean. I believe there were no alcohol, and there was 1 benzodiazepine, which he said he took as a sleeping pill in that whole period of time.
All right. And do you know what days of the week he was going to DePaul?
I imagine I could find that out.
You're a doctor, and you know how quickly alcohol passes out of the blood. Tell the jury how soon alcohol would pass out of the blood.
It would depend how much you would drink.
All right. Well, give an approximation. Say you had a good snortful on a Saturday night.
Give me a little.
What is a good snort?
I just need a little snort. A little snort of some liquor. Get me going. He's about to ask, what's a snort, sir?
Fault to you.
Well, plenty to drink, enough to feel happy. You tested on a Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday. Would it vary what the day it was? You got snockered on Saturday night?
Snuckered.
I don't think there'd be no question. Tuesday would not show anything, and Monday would probably not either.
So alcohol passes out of the system rather rapidly, doesn't it? The fact that he might be drinking on the weekends and attending meetings on Saturday nights and even going there and being tested on Monday or Tuesday would not show the alcohol, would it? I refer you then to July 8th of 1990. On that particular incident, he invited a juvenile named LP, 15 years of age, to his dwelling. Is that correct?
LB?
LP. It was July 8, 1990. He's another juvenile. He's age 15. You want me to give you the name?
Mm-hmm.
He invited a juvenile age 15. He met him in front of was it the 219 Club, and invited him back to his dwelling. Is that correct?
That sounds right.
And they went there by cab to the area at least, and then went into the apartment. Is that true?
As I recall.
And the defendant had made some plans. He couldn't get drugs for this particular event, and he made another alternative plan, did he not?
Yes.
And what was that plan?
I believe it was to hit him on the head.
And hit who?
Every Carl, when I posted that, oh.
Who he brought back that night on the head with a mallet?
With a mallet, yes.
And after he asked this young man to pose for some pictures, then asked the young man to turn over on his back.
Yes.
And the young man had indicated he felt it was about time to leave. And he asked him, well, a few more pictures, will you turn over on your back? Would that be an accurate capsulization of what happened?
That sounds right.
And then he struck the young man on the back, or on the neck, as I recall, but did not render him unconscious. And the young man turned, and there was a confrontation, struggle perhaps, but in any event, he did not slay him at that point. Is that correct?
That's correct.
There's some dispute, and the young man left the home, did he not?
Yes.
Left the apartment? Do you believe Mr. Dahmer had intended to slay this young man?
It sounded like that pattern.
And the young man then came back, didn't he? He left saying he was going to call the police. Mr. Dahmer didn't stop him, and then he came back.
He did come back.
Then Mr. Dahmer tried to strangle him when he came back, didn't he?
Yes.
Eventually that came to a halt, and they spent some time talking about things, and eventually then Mr. Dahmer walked him to a cab at 7 a.m. in the morning or so. Is that about right? Is that according to your recollection?
As best I can recall.
Mr. Dahmer obviously made a decision not to kill that young man, didn't he?
Yes, he did. He did not kill him.
Did you ask him why he didn't kill him? Feel free to refer to your notes.
Okay. I think that would be helpful. Yes, I did find that section. It sounds like that he felt it had gotten too loud in the apartment with the struggle, and that he left with him and got him a cab outside.
In other words, although apparently the way he told it to you, and you haven't gone over the detail, why don't you tell us how he told it to you, what happened, that particular incident, how he reported it to you?
That Panay, that this was he agreed to go home with him for sex. It was about 12 noon. He had gotten a mallet. He said that he had taken him back to get pictures. While in the course of taking pictures, he hit him on the back of the head. There was some struggle. He left and came back. He wanted money.
The boy left and came back, is that right? The boy left and came back.
Louis Panay left and came back. He wanted money. That's when they struggled again on the dining room floor. I think what's here is that he had knocked him down, but that in the course of these events, the noise of the struggle got too loud and that he stopped.
Mr. Dahmer stopped himself at that point.
That interrupted what he had planned to do.
He is really full bore apparently into killing this man. Got his hands around his neck and is attempting to kill him. And the struggle gets too loud and he says, I might get caught here, and pulls back. Would that be makes a decision not to proceed?
That's what it looks like from these notes.
Would you look to, you indicated on the list of things that you relied upon, one of the points was that you, in your cited materials, was the police report of September 24, I think, or 25 or 26, 1990. You see that?
September 26, 1990?
Yes.
Do you have a copy of that?
I'm looking at your report. I think that's one of the things you listed that you read in preparation.
I can look for
It's
it.
under 18, item 18 on your report.
Okay. Yes.
Do you have that in front of you?
Not right in front of me. I can look for it.
Would you get it? It's
Do it. Do it. Hit them all, baby. Pour some brewskis out for everybody, huh? Satisfying pours. Satisfying pours, baby. Yeah, look at that.
Give me the loot! Give me the loot!
Looking through my notes, I don't know what I'm doing. My favorite sound effect. I keep reusing it and can't stop. Make sure you're subbed up, folks. Make sure you're subbed up. Make sure you're hitting the like. Make sure you're sharing this thing out to your community. Let people know you're hanging out at Murder Church. What you watching? So close to 50 likes.
You have before you the police report. Is that
2
correct?
likes away.
Yes.
And that is a complaint given by Mr. Dahmer to the police. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what date does he claim he was robbed?
I'm telling you like it is, baby.
9/24/90.
And what
It's getting close to, it's actually an hour away, but beer 30, about 12:30 here, noon Eastern time. That's when we crack one open.
complaint does he make? What happened? Would you describe the men that robbed him?
Hit it, baby. That's what I like to see. The
He
big
said that he was
5-0.
approached by two
Thank you.
blackmails. Suspect number 1 told Dahmer that he and his cohort were down on their luck and needed money. Dahmer said he didn't have any to give them, and suspect number 1 stated, "You look like you got money. Take your wallet out or we'll pound your ass." Dahmer again refused. Suspect number 1 then shouted, "I got a gun. I should just shoot you." As he reached into a back pocket, Dahmer said he thought the suspect number 1 was reaching for a gun in his back pocket and was scared. Suspect number 1 then went into Dahmer's pockets, removed 2 $1 bills from his wallet and $3 in coins from his front pocket. Then suspects 1 and 2 fled on foot.
And Mr. Dahmer reported that to police officer Matika. Is that correct?
Police officer what?
Matika. Matika. The name of the officer
Matika. Yeah,
to whom
Matika.
that was reported. Did you cited that report? Did you lend? Is that for a particular reason that you cited that report?
It was part of the discovery. I cited it only insofar as that he was a victim of a street crime.
All right, and that was, you cited that report from what would be safe to say, I assume you read many hundreds of police reports.
I think thousands.
Right, pages. That'd be safe
Altogether,
to say.
thousands of pages, yes.
And you pulled that out. Did you give that some credence or some weight to that?
It didn't really influence my opinions, no.
Did you believe it, that he had been a victim of a street crime?
I had no reason not to believe it.
Did you appreciate that he had killed a man, either that day or the day before, one David Thomas? Did that occur to you?
I don't have the date of David Thomas's death in front of me.
Do you have a list there of the dates of the deaths?
I have a 1090, but I don't have the actual date.
Do your records reflect that it was on either Sunday, September 23, 1990, or a Monday, September 24, 1990?
Let me check my records. It's, There's some imprecision as to the date, as to whether it's October or November in my notes.
No, sir, I'm talking of September. David Thomas.
Yes. The date of victim's death I have is 10/90 in the notes that I have.
Just a very general date like
Yes.
that. All right, let me... Would you like this? Examine what has been marked as State's Exhibit number 33 and State's Exhibit number 34. I am not sure. Were you provided the DePaul Hospital records?
I do have the DePaul Hospital records.
That State Exhibit is from that date, from those DePaul records. And do you know, you can start right at the top line. You read the date to the jury?
9/18/90?
No, it's the 9/25 entry.
Oh, the next week. Okay. One-to-one session, no show or call.
And that is the David Dahmer's record. You can see at the upper portion, Jeff Dahmer.
Yes.
And on that particular day, September 25, 1990, you called and you maybe had no show. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And would you notice on 9/26/90, I'm showing you now probation office records. I do not know if this...
Definitely not as likable, Leanne, I would honestly say. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's the vibe. I mean, I don't hate the guy by no means, and I'm not trying to disrespect him, but the other people had some kind of, like, cadence or flair to them that, again, at the end of the day, made me like them. Mikey S. coming through. Welcome. What's going on? Oh, man. Coming back through. Welcome. Buzzed and Confused. Give them the beers, everybody. Perfect timing for me to see it. Boom.
Welcome to the party, pal.
Pop them in. Pop them in. Satisfying pours for Mikey S. What's going on, brother? Thank you for doing that. Appreciate it. Hell yeah. That's awesome. Give you a few beers there. Let me get them. Bam. When I make that sound, I'm hitting the beers. Hitting the beers. You're also going to get my new sound effect just because. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Boom. Appreciate it, bud.
All those records.
That was a short time.
All right, would you look at that, and particularly look at the entry on September 26, 1990, that reflect a call from Mr. Dahmer to his probation officer, Dahmer Chester.
This call is to Donna Chester?
Yes.
Okay.
And calling
Yeah.
particularly, he reports that what he described as the street robbery, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
To the police, he says he lost $5, and they took it to Donna Chester. He says he lost $10.
$10 and a bus pass.
Did he not?
Yes, he did.
All right. And in terms of the record reflects in the charging document, I think, indicates that the death of Mr. Thomas took place on September 24th or September 25th, 1990. September 23rd or September 24, 1990. This was the same time as that alleged street robbery. Is that true?
Well, in one case, it would be a day earlier. In one case, it would be the day.
Now, there's an inconsistent report from what he told the police about the amount taken and what was taken and what he told his probation officer. Is that correct?
There's a $5 difference. And a bus pass.
And a bus pass. And in terms of with respect to the description of one of the robbers as being a 55-year-old man, that's somewhat exceptional to have a 55-year-old man engaging in street robberies. Would you say, in your experience, can't rule it out, but somewhat exceptional?
Anything's possible, but it's not as common as a younger man.
Do you have any opinion as to whether or not that street robbery actually took place or was a fabricated report? Do you have any opinion? The reason I call it to your attention is because it's one of the items you specifically pulled out to rely on.
Could you repeat the question?
Reason I refer to it so intensively is it's of many hundreds of pages, it's one of those that you pull out and cite as something you relied on, that police
Well, it's something that I reviewed.
Well, you reviewed hundreds of pages that you didn't list. You pulled out specifically a number, item 18, police report with defendant as victim of a strong-arm robbery dated 9/26/90.
Yes.
And I'm going to object to the form of the question.
Objection.
He didn't say he relied on it. He said he reviewed it.
Did you rely at all on it for any meaning or any purpose at all?
I didn't rely on it informing my opinions. I reviewed it, though.
In terms of the death of Mr. Tony Hughes, reports submitted initially to the police indicate or strike that. Let's go particularly to David Thomas, the same gentleman we're talking about. Reports submitted to the police, twice the defendant after his arrest said that he did not have sex with David Thomas at any time. Were you aware of that?
That he said he did not.
Yes. Right. Then he later told you that he did. Is that what happened?
He said that he had had sex with all of the victims.
After death?
I would have to look at my notes again.
Notes, baby. Extra bells during the notes. Church bells.
Let me ask this, doctor. Is it important to you whether or not he had sex, anal sex, fellatio, rubbing after death? Is that important to you?
Well, it's important insofar as that is the sexual disorder. The primary sexual disorder is necrophilia.
But counsel...
And he does...
Sure, go ahead.
Go ahead.
He does say that he did have sex after death.
In terms of the various reports, you were submitted something prepared in part by counsel going over police reports and apparently prepared in part by counsel. Is that true?
That's correct.
And you have that in front of you right now?
That's correct.
And you relied on that when you questioned the defendant, did you not?
I utilized that in questioning him.
Right. Did you realize that part of it had been prepared by counsel?
Absolutely.
And do you appreciate that counsel is is required by oath to zealously labor on behalf of the defendant?
Absolutely.
And you appreciate it as having studied psychology and psychiatry, that inevitably even a conscientious attorney is inevitably going to filter through what tends to support the insanity defense and filter out what tends to militate against it.
Unless there's a hypothetical, I'll object to it.
Would that be psychologically generally the case?
Go ahead and
Is there an
answer.
objection?
Do you think that would be psychologically generally the case?
I think that I had to make a determination by asking him whether those statements that had been added were accurate or not.
And did you ask him?
Yes.
And were they accurate? Did he say they were accurate?
He said they were.
And those statements indicate that at least with 4 of the defendants, he did not have sex after death with them. Would that be accurate? I mean, I'm relying now on what you put together from the police reports and what counsel had prepared. Those documents, what counsel submitted to you, submitted a copy to me, indicate that in 4 of the cases, 4 of these defendants, he did not have sex after death with them.
Not for the defendants,
Like
obviously.
that 4 of the victims.
I would have to review exactly which ones those were.
All right, I believe Mr. Hughes is one, Mr. Weinberger is another. Mr. Bredehoff, the last one, is the third. Would you check Hughes first? The Hughes report. fourth person would be Turner. Let's start with Hughes.
I'd like to check my notes, personal notes on Hughes as well.
Does the report submitted by counsel indicate that there was not sex with Hughes after death?
It doesn't indicate anything, as far as I can see.
The copy I have, sir, it reads as follows. Sex after death. No, J.D. drank too much. After victim died, J.D. laid him down on bedroom floor for 3 days. Do you have that? This is with respect to Mr. Tony Anthony Hughes. Victim number 12.
I do see where you're reading from. I'd also like to see what he said in my personal notes.
Well, that's fine. Take your time. Find it.
New details.
The only additional note I had made there is in regard to the drilling of the holes in his head.
So as far as we know, he did not have sex with anal or oral sex with Tony Hughes after he killed him. Would that be correct?
As far as we know.
All right. Would you turn to your notes then with respect to Mr. Montrell? He's also known as Matt Turner.
Okay.
Matt Turner, also known as Donald Montrell.
He does indicate to me that he did have sex with the body.
Speak up, please, Doctor.
He does say to me that he has sex with the body, that he cuts open the body, cuts the belly open, sees the insides, appearance, the intestines, different colors, red, blue, yellow. Surprising to see how many colors there were in the internal organs.
And then has sex?
Would get sexually excited. On a 1 to 10 scale, he said that this started at, he indicated that that happened with victim number 14.
My question is, the report submitted to you by counsel indicates, and that presumably is after counsel interviewed him, this is after the police interviewed him, after counsel interviewed him, the report we received says, sex after death, no, just took pictures of victim as victim didn't appeal to him. Is that what the report submitted to you by counsel indicated? What I just read, no, just took pictures as victim didn't appeal to him.
that's what it says in that report.
All right, you've made some note that I can't read at the very bottom of that page. Starts why kill or something like
Yeah.
that. Would you read that to the jury? Mine is somewhat faded and tracks off the bottom of the page.
Yeah, okay. Why kill? I don't know. So many times before. Did not find him attractive, but not as attractive. I wanted his head for the temple. Never just for skull for temple.
So he didn't kill him for sex, he killed him so he could have a head for the temple? Is that what, I mean, I'm just trying to get an answer here. He apparently, according to the report counsel submitted, did not have sex with him. And you're saying then he decided to kill him, he didn't find him attractive, but decided to kill him because he wanted a head.
From what I can determine from my notes, he killed him, he had sex with him, and he was wanting to keep his head for the temple.
Oh, he did have sex with him.
That's what I get from my notes.
All right, well, would you read that portion of your notes that indicate that?
He refers to the victim, cutting open belly, seeing the inside, appearance, intestines, different colors, red, blue, yellow. Surprising to see how many colors there were in the internal organs. I would get sexually excited. And I asked on a 1 to 10 scale, he said a 10. Masturbating to orgasm, ejaculated into the insides of the organs. So that indicates to me that that's what he remembered happening.
Of the sex. So he didn't do anything to the body, it was just after he opened the body that he ejaculated, it got aroused and then ejaculated. Is that what, am I drawing the right?
That's, could you repeat that again, just so I'm not agreeing to something I didn't hear?
I'm relying on counsel's report and the police reports. Counsel's report said no sex after death. Isn't that what your report says?
We've said this 7 times.
I know, he asked me, didn't understand the question. Did the report you received say no sex after death from counsel? Is that what the report says?
That's what it says. It still says that, and what I said is I went through the reports and asked him personally. I didn't rely on reports that were generated by the defense.
Is that at the point then when he said that he didn't find him attractive, but he wanted to kill him for the skull? In other words, did he kill him for the skull, then decide to slit him open and have the sex? That's what the thrust of my question is. I take it from the note that you put at the bottom, of which the poor copy I get isn't legible and tracks off the page.
The notation is in pencil and is kind of light. That's probably why it didn't copy well.
Isn't that what that says? I didn't find him attractive, so I killed him so I could have his skull?
Well, with all due respect, if there's somebody who's telling them it's on there, read the whole thing.
Give me a copy of it.
Well, I can give you the best copy. I can't wait to read everything you give me. Go up and take a look at it.
We'll do that.
Doctor, let him go up and read it, please.
Okay.
Oh, that's the Xerox.
Why kill? Then there's an I with something.
I don't know.
I don't know. So many times before,
Yes.
did not find him attractive, but not as attractive. Is that what that means? Is what that reads?
Yes.
Wanting head for temple. Is that correct?
Yes.
Then what does that read? I
That
can't.
says never just for skull for temple. What that means is that it was for a combination of purposes. One, to get the skull for the temple, and one, to engage in necrophilic sexual activity.
Right. And is that what he told you that the second purpose was?
That's what I can determine from my notes.
Because that's what he did. Because he slit it open. Did he provide you the second reason, or just tell you what he did? He said one reason was for the skull. Did he say the second reason is, and say it?
I'm a little confused right now.
All right. With respect to the first purpose, he said, number one purpose, wasn't attracted to him, wanted the skull for the temple. That's one of the reasons he killed him.
That's one of the reasons.
But that's not the only reason.
Right.
And my question is, did you ask him what was the other reason?
Yes.
And he told you for sex?
Yes.
And that he expressly told you that, or did he just say, well, this is what I did with the body?
He said it was never just for the skull.
So there were two reasons.
Right.
With respect to the defendant, or the deceased Weinberger,
Okay.
do you think he intended to kill Weinberger?
No, I don't.
This is one of the gentlemen that he drilled in the head, is that correct?
That's correct.
So he was going to forego, his intent was apparently to forego doing anything with the insides. He was going to keep him alive.
This is where he'd gone into the phase of trying to create the zombies, yes.
And he undertook to make that effort, is that correct?
That's
with
correct.
Weinberger?
Yes.
And Weinberger, it succeeded the first day at least, didn't it?
It's, well, if you can call the kind of state Mr. Weinberger was in succeeding, he wasn't dead the first day.
And he survived, and when the defendant came back, did he tell you what he did with Mr. Weinberger? He left, was it to go to work and returned?
I believe so.
At least there's some reason he left and came back in the house and found Mr. Weinberger up, or at least or awake or moving about. Did he have sex with him at that time? Did he indicate to you?
He said that he was alive for 2 days, that he was comatose, he went to work, and then he found him dead the next morning.
Did he have sex with him after he died?
That he dwindled to death. I didn't want him to die. He was the only one who had apparently stayed alive that long after the first injection. He does not say that he had sex with him after he died.
With respect to Joseph Bredehoft, that was the last victim.
Okay.
The reports we received, the police interviews, and the reports from counsel indicate, I quote, sex after death, no, wasn't as attractive. Would you turn to Mr. Bredehoft, number 17?
Yes.
15 in terms of this proceeding.
Yes. He did indicate that he did not have sex with him after death.
With respect to Mr. Tracy Edwards, you got the police report of their interview with Tracy Edwards. That's the individual whose incident that precipitated the arrest of the defendant.
Yes.
You received a police report, a multi-page police report about that incident, did you not? An interview of Mr. Edwards?
Yes, I did.
And you also received other information, particularly a transcript of a Phil Donahue show?
It wasn't a transcript, it was the actual tape.
I don't know if you made the comparison. Did you then, if you had it before you, did you see that there were inconsistencies between what he said on the Phil Donahue show and what he said to the police?
Ooh, I see an anniversary in the chat here. Groot, 1 month membership. Happy anniversary. Pass the beers out. Happy to be a part of the family. And I'll still give it to you right here.
Welcome to the party,
Love it.
pal.
Love it. Love it. Satisfying pours for Groot. Fill them up. Fill them up. Almost noon. It's almost noon. Shit. Love it. And also, right under that, Groot coming through, adding to the collection plate this week with the $4.99. Boom! Groot, thank you again. I'm a bad, bad man. Love it. Thank you so much. Seriously. The best. I was indeed. I had to go see a man about a dog there just for a moment. Just for a moment. I seriously contemplating go ahead and getting my pre-12:30 drink. It's actually not going to be beer 30 today. It's going to be booze 30. I've only got some Peach Crown Royal rocking and rolling today. So yeah, that's what I will be getting here in about 40 minutes or so. Oh yeah, there's some brewskis. There they are. There they are. There they are. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Appreciate it. Again, everyone coming through. If you haven't hit that like, please hit the like. Again, helps us out a lot here at Publicly Buzzed. And again, share this out to your community. Share it out to the world. Share it out to your Facebook. Share it out to your friends. Share it out to your Twitters. And absolutely love it. Thank you.
I would need to review a copy of the police report.
Dude, yes. Oh, man, I do. What? Dude, Jay, absolutely.
If you recollect, in terms...
Do you smell what the Rock is cooking? I can't do the people's eyebrow, but...
of the police report, there is no mention of any rocking or chanting by the defendant in the police report, Mr. Edwards' report to the police, but such claim is made on the Phil Donahue show. Does that stir your recollection at all?
It stirs it, and it also stirs it that he said that that's what occurred to me when I spoke to him on phone, on interview.
In terms, he also made a statement on the Donahue show that there were 8 locks on the door. He examined a picture here in the open courtroom and indicated that there were apparently only 2 on the door. Do you recall the assertion about the locks?
I do recall the assertion about the locks, and I do recall reading an additional statement about
Pop
the
and
locks,
lock, I can't really do it right,
which I
but
think is important.
that's what it would look like if I did
Yes,
do
it
it.
was made regarding the
Be the
crime scene
janky
itself
lock.
that did indicate that there were multiple locks on the doors.
Is that the
Several
robot?
locks,
I
at least
don't
2.
know.
Did it say how many?
It said
I don't know. I'm
indicated
very
more
white.
than 2.
Did that include the entire apartment, that there were locks on
I
the
would have to
inside
re-
bedroom doors and so on?
I would have to review that, but they do mention a very high
That's gotta be Kane!
security setup with multiple locks inside and
Through hell, fire, and brimstone, that's gotta be Kane!
outside.
There were locks on, several locks on the front door, 2. There were locks on the door into the bedroom, I believe 2 on that there. There was an alarm system. There was a camera, a video camera. That's probably what you're thinking about, that particular report.
I would like to review it. I do have it.
You do have it?
Yes.
Right. Do you wish to check it? Go ahead.
Yes. Okay.
Go ahead.
This is on the handout that offense says second-degree sexual assault and
I'm telling you like it is, baby.
Dude, Jim Ross clips would actually be amazing. He would be perfect for any stream, just any of his random freakouts. That man's broken in half! God is my witness! He is broken in half!
sexual exploitation of a child.
I don't, that's not the same apartment.
It isn't, but this is what the materials are stapled to, and this is
You talk about your John 3:16. Austin 3:16 says, I just whooped your ass!
how I received them. Page A9115.
I'm telling you like it is, baby.
501 at the top, Oliver Lacey, and at the bottom, 2472, page 91. Scene investigation. The apartment contains heavy-duty security protection to include multiple locks, a security alarm system, and a video camera. Additional security locks are noted on the inner doors of the apartment.
Now, the inner doors would not be the outer door, would it?
No.
You understand that? Is there mention further about locks on the bedroom doors and a sliding door into the bathroom hallway?
That there is a sliding door to the bathroom?
Into the hallway leading to the bedroom and bathroom. And what I'm saying is there were locks inside. The multiple
Yes.
locks refer to
Okay.
a variety of locks at the dwelling. Is that correct?
Okay.
You're not concluding from that there were 8 locks on the front door, or are you?
It doesn't mention any number of locks. It says multiple locks.
All right, on what? Read it again. Read the sentence again.
The apartment contains a heavy security protection to include multiple locks.
And that doesn't say multiple locks on the front door, does it?
No, it doesn't.
It means the scene, there are multiple locks.
But it does add later, additional security locks are noted on the inner doors in the apartment, and that's why I assumed that it referred to the outer door.
So you inferred that it meant that it was referring, doesn't say that, but that was your inference, is that
Right,
correct?
because they mentioned inner doors later, and that they had security locks.
There was a picture shown to Mr. Edwards here in open court.
Yes. Okay.
With respect to Mr. Edwards also claimed that he was shown the contents of a barrel when he appeared on the Phil Donahue show, but he made no such statements to the police. Is that your recollection?
Your Honor, I'm going to take this material relevant. What Mr. Edwards says to the police is what Mr. Edwards, unless he relied upon that. Let me just get my objection. Unless he relied upon that, and it had something to do with forming his opinions based upon his discussion with Tracy Edwards, I think it's immaterial and irrelevant.
You list Tracy Edwards as one of the Phil Donahue show as one of the records reviewed.
That's correct.
Did you rely on anything you saw on the Phil Donahue show?
I noted the victim giving an account on the Phil Donahue show.
Did you compare that account to the differences between what appeared in the Phil Donahue show and what appears in his statement to the police?
Not because I didn't have a transcript. It wasn't against each other, and I don't have that. I have his collateral interview with me, but I don't have a copy of the police report right in front of me.
I don't have an extra copy of it here. Would you look on there and see if there's anything on there about rocking in his... This was a statement given by Mr. Edwards to the police subsequent to the entry by the police into the apartment building and the apartment particularly of Mr. Donahue, Mr. Dahmer. Is that right?
This is when Edwards was handcuffed on one wrist and approached the officers.
That's right.
Yes.
That's the report. Mm-hmm. And then he's taken downtown and interviewed and gives a statement about what transpired. And would you look through that statement and see if he says, it goes into some detail about what happened and what transpired, and I'm asking you to scrutinize that to see if it says anything about Dahmer rocking and chanting. I'm sorry, I'm not sure you have the right report. Is it a report of the When I'm referring, counsel, I'm referring to section 13G, page 5.
Well, I'm going to state on the record that I object to the question because there has been no foundation laid by any police officer in the city of Milwaukee that he asked Mr. Edwards whether or not Mr. Dahmer was chanting and rocking, and therefore it is inappropriate to ask this witness that, but if it's to save some time, I'm confident that he did not say in any police reports that Mr. Dahmer was rocking and chanting.
If it please the court, he has said he's relied on the Phil Donahue show.
Well, just a minute. The way I understand what Mr. Boyle just said is that he's making an objection and then withdrawing it so that he can go ahead and answer it. If that's the case.
I object to the form of the question because there's been no foundation laid that he was asked to wit Mr. Tracy whether or not he was ever asked by a policeman whether Mr. Dahmer was rocking and chanting. And therefore, we're wasting time because I know it's not in that report. And I'll save a lot of time by keeping this witness from having to read something that I know that isn't in any of those reports.
Love it.
Well, the only thing is, Mr. Boyle, you're not the one on the witness stand. I'm going to overrule the objection.
Okay.
Okay. That passive-aggressive. Okay. My Boyle. Wow. He doesn't like to admit to defeat. Neither of these guys. No, nobody likes to admit to defeat, right? But yeah, specifically McCain and Boyle. Don't like it, baby. Don't like it at all.
says one officer asked Dahmer if this was some kind of perverted act or if he was a psycho, to which Dahmer replied, "Yes, I am," but it contains nothing about him rocking back and forth.
Did you advance that statement that you did in part as an effort to support the defendant, sir? There was nothing, I asked you no question about what was said by Edwards to a police officer or what an officer said, did I?
I would object to that, because that's just an argument.
Sustained. Let's...
The issue is there was nothing there that says anything about rocking and chanting, is there?
There's nothing about rocking and chanting.
Yes.
There are other things in both reports, but there's nothing about rocking and chanting.
And he did, however, say that the Dahmer was rocking and chanting on when he was on the Phil Donahue show, didn't he?
I don't recall.
But you did rely, did you make any reliance at all on what you saw on the Phil Donahue show, Mr. Edwards?
No.
All right, that saves us all a lot of trouble. Thank you. With respect to the temple, the matter of...
That's how I live, actually, most of my life. I ain't gonna lie. My fiance would probably be... I'm sure she literally hears me in this room right now screaming out wrestling quotes like, what the fuck is he doing? It's a true crime show. Like...
The temple.
Yes.
We're mixing them together, baby!
Was that the key thing that causes you to reach the formal opinion that he is psychotic disorder?
Good call, CR. Gavel sound. That'd be good. That'd be real good.
Order not otherwise specified.
Go to the notes.
There are three things. Mm-hmm. It's the creation of a temple to serve as a power base to give him powers that he does not otherwise have, the powers of which getting from this kind of gruesome temple is completely bizarre. That is one. The second is actually trying to create a living zombie who would forget his identity and stay with him forever, and that this was a grandiose and bizarre delusion as well that he pursued.
Right. When you say creation, there was in fact no temple created, is that correct?
There were parts bought for the temple, and there was a plan for the temple, there was bleaching of skulls for the temple, and there was painting of skulls for the temple.
But there was no temple. He had put together no temple.
He did not put together a temple that was incomplete at the time of his arrest.
He had sufficient heads, didn't he? There were 11 heads recovered. There was 7 skulls, 4 heads that had not been denuded of tissue. He had actually 11, which is 1 more than he would need for the temple.
So that would fill the requirement for heads. I don't know if he had 2 skeletons that were complete and set up the way he described it in his picture.
He had Mr. Miller's skeleton, didn't he?
I don't know that he had it set up as a complete skeleton, sort of holding up the ends of the tables is what it looks like.
The table was there, but do you know what was on the table?
I know that some of the posing of the victims occurred on the table.
At the time of the arrest, do you know what was on the table?
I don't know.
There was a large fish tank on the table.
Okay.
I want you to listen carefully to what the discussion, I can do it in length or hit at the heart of it, between Dr. Dietz, who interviewed the defendant with respect to this temple, and ask you if the response given affects in any way your opinion.
I'm going to object to the form of this, Your Honor. I don't see any way, before the witness is called to testify, that he can bring in testimony of what somebody else asked to lay a foundation to cross-examine my expert.
I think that he can formulate a hypothetical question based on information that will later be testified to.
Hypothetical's fine.
Okay, I think that's what he's talking about formulating here.
Doctor, I want you to assume that a very skilled psychiatrist named Park Dietz conducted interviews with the defendant over 3 days in this building. And that during that time, the variety of the entire background of the individual's birth and Mr. Dahmer, and what transpired in connection with the slayings, starting with Mr. Hicks, and an extensive discussion ensued over 3 days between Dr. Dietz and Mr. Dahmer. And one of the subjects discussed during that time was the temple that you've referred to. I'm going to give a part of it, which I think is the essence of it. They were talking about this temple being constructed. The question, as I read, question is Dr. Dietz, and answer is Mr. Dahmer. I want you to assume that this was said. They're talking about the status of it. Question, you were short money for the chair and the lamp, right? Answer, agrees. In another 6 months, it would have all been set up if I still had the job. Question, What kind of power did you think this would give you? Answer, I don't know. I was just experimenting. It would have been a place that I would have felt comfortable sitting in and trying to get in touch with whatever spiritual powers there might be. Question, did you make any efforts to get in touch with spiritual powers while you were collecting? Answer, not at this point, no. Question, later did you? Answer, no. I would have if I had set this up though. Does that change your opinion at all about that?
No, it doesn't.
In other words, the fact that he speaks of spiritual powers or whatever spiritual powers there might be, does that sound like a definitive affirmation that he believes there's spiritual powers that are going to help him?
Well, you're talking about a hypothetical case, or you're talking about this case?
I'm talking about a hypothetical case where he responds, whatever spiritual powers.
Well, in a hypothetical case, I would need to know a lot more information than what you're giving me.
So you couldn't answer on that?
No, I couldn't.
Do you know that
Spicy.
Dr.
It's been spicy.
And Dr. Becker talked about the temple and considered it in terms of possible psychosis and rejected that as evidence of psychosis? Are you aware of that?
Yes.
Are you aware that every other doctor that examined him felt he did not suffer from the psychosis that you said he suffered from? Are you aware of that?
Yes, I am.
That goes back to the time that psychologist Dr. Charles Lodel talked with the defendant back on January 5 of 1989. I think you got the copy of Dr. Lodel's report?
Yes.
Would you look to page 4 of that report, just the last paragraph above conclusions? The last paragraph above conclusions on page 4.
I heard you. Give me a second. Jesus. Fuck.
Starts, although.
Yes.
Does this sentence appear in that report? This was a psychologist to whom the defendant had been referred and whom he saw on January 5, 1989. Various tests were conducted, and he sent this report. Mm-hmm. Although Mr. Dahmer appears to be a very psychologically problem man, there is no evidence at this time that he is experiencing a disorder such as psychosis. Were you aware of that report, and had you examined it?
Yes, I had.
While DePaul Hospital was attempting to treat the defendant with a drinking problem, he had several visits with a doctor by the name of Dr. Greg Krems. Is that accurate? He is a psychiatrist affiliated with the hospital.
That's correct.
And would you look to the entry of October 13, 1990? It's the entry of October 13, 1990.
Yes, I have it.
And towards the end of that entry, do the following words appear: no evidence of psychotic process. Do you see that?
Where are you reading?
Towards the end of that entry of October 13, 1990. Towards the end of it. The second to last line of the entry.
Yes, I see that.
No evidence of psychotic process.
I would like to point out that we are reading very small sections that do not give the full flavor. However, they do say that there is no psychotic process. In both cases, they say that the person is seriously ill, needing hospitalization, and they prescribe medications in this case to treat him.
There's a big difference between having problems and maybe even being in a hospital and being psychotic. Big difference, am I right?
Well, he does diagnose him with a disorder that in some cases is associated with depression. I mean, depression is associated at times with psychosis, and he does give him that diagnosis.
And he speaks as well about his antisocial personality problems. Is that correct? Personality disorder?
No, he diagnoses a mixed personality disorder.
But he describes it as a personality disorder, right?
He describes a mixed personality disorder.
Doctor, I'm not going to go through each of the other, Dr. Rosen's reports, the various doctors. It'll take time. You and I know there is no entry anywhere.
Please don't put words in my mouth, sir. I know what I said, and I'm reading it.
In those reports that say this man is psychotic. Am I right?
We do know that in Dr. Crowley's report, there is a mention of something that is very much like what Tracy Edwards described as happening in the apartment.
Dr. Smale's report?
No, Dr. Crowley.
All right. Does Dr. Crowley say anything about him being psychotic? He saw Dr. Crowley 3 times. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the entries are short. Is that accurate?
They're short. There's a major entry and there's a progress note. And he also prescribes 2 kinds of medications to treat the defendant.
My question is there anything in Dr. Crowley's report that says this man is psychotic?
He says this. At this point, he feels his whole life is falling apart and feels that he would rather be dead than on the street, and consequently there is some suicidal potential in the near future. Mr. Dahmer also reports such intense anxiety that he was almost totally immobilized on occasion. He said that his mind would start to race, he would start to sweat, he is unable to think straight, and that he never felt anything like that before. And that is 1 or 2 days before the last murder.
And that is what he is saying to Dr. Crowley.
That's correct.
Is that correct? Dr. Crowley, has Dr. Crowley said he was psychotic?
May I read what Dr. Crowley says?
Certainly may.
I also told him that if he felt overwhelmed and suicidal and or so disabled by his anxiety that he was unable to do any problem solving, that he should go to the Milwaukee County Mental Health Complex for some inpatient treatment. And finally, despite his history of substance abuse, I will prescribe the anti-anxiety agent lorazepam as well as doxepin for sleep and the depression. So here you have a suicidal patient describing psychotic, possibly psychotic symptoms, and nothing is done except if you don't feel better in the morning, go to a mental health center for inpatient treatment.
Let me put that to you again, Doctor. Dr. Crowley does not say that he is psychotic.
No, he doesn't.
He says certain manifestations that you choose to interpret as agreeing with you, although no other doctor has agreed with your statement. Of the number that saw him, including your experts, no other doctor has agreed that he's psychotic, have they?
I'm going to object to him yelling at him. Why don't you just ask the question?
Stop yelling at my man. Why are you yelling? Why are you always yelling, McCain? Shit. Always up here just yelling at people. You don't know this, you don't know that. Just talk to the man.
The question, the way it's presented with his voice.
Doctor?
Psychosis is not mentioned diagnostically in any of the reports.
Doctor, there's got to be, and I know you have,
except mine.
I know you haven't seen these witnesses, and I can understand that, but I want you to assume something.
This man's like, let me free. Let me go.
I think you were not here in court at the time. Maybe you watched it on television, but a Detective Murphy gave extensive testimony, and at the close, towards the close, he said in response to questions that he had spent up to 60 hours with Mr. Dahmer. And when he was asked questions about his observations, he responded stating basically, I want you to assume this. To assume that he responded that in those 60 hours of interviews, he observed no delusions, no hallucinations, no incoherence, no racing thoughts, no inability to relate his thoughts to one another, that he did not see him in a stupor, he did not believe he was out of touch with reality in any way. I want you to assume that he was asked such question and made such answer. I want you to assume further that a man named Benning will testify who was Mr. Dahmer's direct foreman from 1985, when he started at Ambrosia, up through, although when it was a 1-to-4 relationship, the foreman to Mr. Dahmer, that foreman relationship continued from 1985 through July of 1991, and that he will be asked, the question to which he will say no, did you see any evidence of delusions, hallucinations, incoherence? Did you ever see him unable to relate his thoughts to one another? Did he ever indicate racing thoughts? Did you ever see him in a stupor? Did you ever see him out of touch with reality in any way? And that he will say no. I want you to assume further the officers that arrested him at the time of the indecent exposure, and at the time the key investigating officer, and at the time of the second-degree sexual assault, where he was arrested at his job early that next morning, that in response to those same questions, he will make the same answers. I want you to assume that 2 police officers will testify that they came upon a man naked at North 25th and West State Street in May of 1991, and that Mr. Dahmer came on the scene, that there were citizens there, that the fire truck arrived and a police van, that they spoke with Mr. Dahmer about, and he spoke saying that the individual named Conorak sent to some phone was a friend of his, and that he talked to the officers about that, went back with the officers to his apartment, that is to Mr. Dahmer's apartment. I want you to assume that those officers will testify that they saw at that time no delusions in Mr. Dahmer, no hallucinations, no incoherence, that he appeared able to relate his thoughts to one another, that he didn't give evidence of racing thoughts, that he was not in a stupor, that he was not out of touch with reality in any way. I want you to assume further that 1 or more probation officers that worked with him during a probationary period that stretched over a number of months and involved a number of meetings will be asked the same question. Did you see during those meetings any evidence of delusions, hallucinations, incoherence? Was he unable to relate his thoughts to one another at any time? Did he have racing thoughts? Was he in a stupor? Was he out of touch with reality in any way? I want you to assume in response to each of those questions, first that Detective Murphy answered no, and that each of those witnesses will, when those questions were put to them, will answer no, they saw no such evidence. I want you to assume all such testimony will be given. Will that influence your opinion with respect to psychosis in any way?
That will not influence my opinion in any way.
That's all.
I think I got about 10 minutes, and maybe we can finish up then.
Let's go ahead, Mr. Boyle.
First of all, there was a question asked about Dr. Smale's findings that Mr. Dahmer was all times competent to stand trial. Can you explain the difference between what a psychiatrist or a psychologist is to look at when they're talking about a person's competency to stand trial, as opposed to a psychiatrist or a psychologist making a determination as to the state of mind at the time of the criminal offense?
Yeah, it's a very different kind of examination. The examination as to whether someone is able to come in here and stand trial refers to what their mental functioning is right now. Are they unable to appreciate, are they able to cooperate with attorneys in their defense, and are they able to appreciate the nature of the proceedings? Those tend to be 2 key features in fitness, and it's at this moment. So that could be done with Mr. Dahmer today, and presumably there are assumptions being made, or that is done.
Will you pull the mic a little closer to you?
Yes.
Is it clear that at the time of the commission of the offense, that the inquiry is to whether or not one was suffering from a mental disease, not whether or not they were competent to stand trial?
That's what is done in a mental and a criminal responsibility.
And a person can be competent to stand trial and still be suffering from a mental disease.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. Now let's talk about this fantasy. How important is it for you to know every single solitary factor concerning the fantasy and how the fantasy is going to be carried out?
Is it possible to phrase it any other way?
Sure. In other words, is it necessary that you know that if a person's fantasy is young males and X, Y, Z, that in order to achieve that fantasy, that they may use a club, a bludgeon, a pill, a gun, a knife? How important is to know the method if you on that kind of a fantasy?
Well, the method may be important, but more important is why they're doing what they're doing.
Now, Mr. McCann said something about degrees of sexual desires. In any 5 given individuals, the degree of sexual desires can be different, correct? Not everybody has the same degree of sexual desires, right?
No, they don't.
I mean, some people have a low level, and some people have a high level, and some people have medium levels.
Some people have what?
Medium levels.
Medium, okay, that's fair.
So the fact that Mr. Dahmer had sexual desires towards males may have changed as to the strength of those desires from time to time, correct?
That's correct.
In other words, no one is suggesting, is it, in your business that every day that he walked around...
This is a series of leading questions. It's improper. I object to it.
Can you tell us whether or not you are stating as a psychiatrist that his degree of sexual desires from 1978 through 1991 was always constant as far as the strength of those desires?
It was not always constant, and there were conscious efforts to resist those desires, but it didn't last.
Now, there's some question about Mr. Dahmer not picking out people who had automobiles for the reasons that Mr. McCann said. And he used the word that Mr. Dahmer was very cunning. Is there any question about that? He was very cunning, was he not?
Yes.
Mr. McCann said, is the reason you didn't ask that question is because of your inexperience? Do you consider yourself inexperienced?
No, I don't.
How many people have you interviewed since you got into the business of psychology or psychiatry of people who may be suffering from a mental disease or defect?
Objection, repetitious.
You opened up the door. This experience business.
It's a repetitious question.
I'm concerned about how broad the question is.
Very, very simple.
Mr. Boyle, because you included both psychology and psychiatry. Now,
I'll leave it back to psychiatry.
Okay.
I see 30 to 40 clinical patients on a weekly basis, which may include diagnosis or ongoing treatment, and I've seen hundreds of patients since I've started work as a psychiatrist.
Are you required to ask them questions?
Yes.
On this business of the cars, are you aware of the fact that Mr. Dahmer did get in a car with one of the victims and a friend and got a ride from them to the grandmother's house, or towards the grandmother's house?
I don't recall which case that was. I recall reading something about them being in a car.
If Mr. Dahmer's grandmother had not come across Mr. Dahmer and Mr. Flowers, based upon what you have learned and based upon your expertise in the field of psychiatry, do you have an opinion as to whether or not Mr. Flowers would have been killed or not?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
I believe he would have been.
Would have been what?
Would have been killed.
There was a series of time when Mr. McCann brought to your attention that Mr. Dahmer, for a period of about a year and a few months, didn't kill anyone. You know that he was under work release during 9 of those months, did you not? He was in jail.
I know. That's true, and then there was a time when he was at his grandmother's house as well.
But when he was in jail, did you come to learn that he didn't have a place to live other than the jail to which he had to return every day?
Yes.
Now, Doctor, you come to learn there was about 8,500 pages of police reports in this case?
I didn't count each individual one. There are thousands and thousands. You've seen the struggle I've tried to go through to find them, even though I've tried to index them.
Was it clear to you that what we were doing in sending you the data that we also gave copies of to the district attorney was to assist you in you doing your job, correct?
Yes.
Were you ever told by myself or anyone in my office that was in those documents was the absolute fact of the matter?
No.
You were the one who was supposed to do the questioning, correct?
That's why.
Were we ever there to tell you what to ask?
No, you were never with me on any occasion.
Now, there's a question asked about no other doctor has found a psychosis. If I were to tell you that both Dr. Berlin and Dr. Becker considered the impact of the temple and what it may mean relative to the psychosis, and also other matters, but couldn't support it, how remarkably different would that be than you doing the same thing and finding it?
I think that we did independent evaluations and I came to conclusions that I feel are fully confident with and that I supported.
Has anything that Mr. McCann brought to your attention in any way altered the opinions you gave as to Mr. Dahmer's mental disease and the effect of it on each and every time of these homicides?
No, it doesn't.
He asked you a series of questions about all these people like Dr. Lodel and Dr. Crowley and Dr. Rosen and doctors, people at DePaul, et cetera, and so forth. They all talked to Mr. Dahmer and made opinions prior to the time that it was discovered that he had killed 15 human beings, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, is it appropriate for a psychiatrist to be questioned on a given matter concerning his opinion about a person's mental disease at the time of the commission of homicides, and to use opinions of other doctors who have not made or rendered an opinion as to the mental disease of the defendant at the time of the commission of the homicides because either they didn't know about them or weren't asked to render that opinion?
That's a very argumentative question, if it please the court.
Sure. 16.
Would you render an opinion about how a person's necrophilia may have caused them to act if you didn't even know they were a necrophiliac?
You wouldn't have the facts.
Thank you.
McCann.
Doctor? All that, like, such as Dr. Greg Krems, who said he was not psychotic, Dr. Lodel, who said he was not psychotic. Obviously, they were speaking of their observations of the man at that time.
Yes, they knew.
McCann said, I ain't done yet. I ain't done yet. How about one more? How about one more round? One more.
Yeah, that's correct.
And at that time, in fact, he was killing people, wasn't he? When Krems saw him, when Lodel saw him. When Lodel saw him on January 5 of 1989, he had already killed a number of people, had he not?
That's correct.
And when Krems saw him later, he had already killed a number of people, had he not?
That's correct.
And of course, it's proper for you to consider in your overall assessment. You looked at their medical records, gave it such weight as you thought it should give, but you certainly considered that. If they had said he's wild and he's psychotic, you would have considered that, wouldn't you? In other words, you looked at that.
I looked at all. I asked, and I hope I got all of the mental health records.
They did not know that he was killing people, but from what they looked at him, they said he's not psychotic.
They said he's seriously ill. They didn't say he's psychotic.
They said he was not psychotic, didn't they? That's what the terms they used.
That's correct.
And
without knowing the facts.
Well, he was in fact killing at the time, and they were examining him. They were conducting examination. And it's perfectly proper for you to consider that, is it not, what their opinions were at the time?
I considered all the mental health input, school records, anything I could find.
When I talked to you about the period, the 14-month period between the slaying of Sears and the slaying of the next gentleman, I pointed out in my questions that he had been serving time in the release facility, did I not, in the jail?
I believe you did.
Yes, and you know, of course, when a man is released to go to work, if he chooses, if he feels that that's what he decides to do, he can instead go out at midnight. Instead of going to work, he can go out to a park or out to a shopping center or a tavern and pick up someone, take him to a hotel, kill him, and do what he wants with the body, if that's what he chooses to do, can't he?
Anything's possible.
Sure, that's all.
You may step down, Doctor. Thank you. We'll, as far as the jury is concerned, we at this point will break for the evening. We'll reconvene at 8:30 tomorrow morning. However, there is a matter that has to be heard concerning this case, and therefore I ask counsel to remain.
May very well be in the morning. I'm going to announce to the court that I rest, but I'll just look through my notes before.
Court's in recess.
All right. Wow. Yeah, and we're going to be going into George Palermo, Dr. George Palermo. Hope I'm not butchering that. Probably am. The Jeffrey Dahmer's court-appointed psychiatrist takes a stand. So, yeah, that will be the beginning of next week, folks. Again, another murder church in the books here. Thanks, everyone, for coming through, hanging out. Appreciate it. Yeah, keep an eye out this week on the channel, on the community, on Twitter. Tuesday night, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, I'll be coming on with something. This week, I think I'm going to be doing a members-only stream, so keep an eye out for that. That may be Thursday night if everything works out, so keep an eye out for that. Definitely make sure you're following Jay this week. Again, YNW Melly comes back tomorrow. Yeah, and Jay's going to be following that in the morning. I'll be there as well in the chat, so come hang out. Again, Tuesday night, 10 p.m. right here. I think there's going to be a members only. That may be Thursday night with Dan. So again, maybe, maybe that will actually be 10 p.m. Eastern Time as well. And then, of course, Feral Friday, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And then we'll circle all the way back around, make a giant loop for Murder Church next week, week 9, for the continuation of the Jeffrey Dahmer insanity trial. Absolute chaos here on the channel per usual. And the J Buzz Nation, keeping it real. Thanks, everyone, for coming through. Viv, thank you. Absolutely amazing. Per usual. Megsy, keeping it going. Groot, thanks everyone. Seriously. Yeah, go enjoy your Sunday. I've got a couple of real life things to do per usual on a Sunday. One of the few days you get to do it. I'm going to do a little bit of editing later as well. Anybody in the chat, just before you go, I do want to say, go check out the latest video that I did on Rex Heerman. Again, they just caught the serial killer. And I did a video breaking down a story of a lady who had an interaction with him less than a month ago. I think July 3rd was the date. In a park. She was out cycling, and yeah, her story is pretty interesting. Go check that video out. Please give it a watch, give it a like, share it out, give it some love. And yeah, as you head out the door, hit the like on this stream if you have not yet. If you haven't subbed up and you're here this deep, you're a crazy person. Sub up. Hit the 3 little dots on the side. Make sure all notifications are turned on. Share all of this out to your communities. Let people know you're watching Publicly Buzzed. Yeah, not that Nikki. Happy Sunday. Hanging out. Then good with. Thank you for hanging out with us. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Leanne. Thank you, City Kitty. Thank you, CR. Thank you, Viv. Groot, Megsy, all you guys. Jamie, thank you for modding today. Mandy, thank you for modding. Austin, thank you for being amazing and producing those shirts. Again, only one shirt actually remains, folks, and that is it. That variant is going to be dead after literally today. Boom, as soon as that one sells, actually. So thank you all so much. I appreciate it. Boom, Tuesday night, 10 p.m. Bam. Enjoy your Sunday. Love you guys.
See, we shoot them up bang bang over here. We not scared of they motherfucking ass.